This program deals with devil worship and satanic beliefs. It contains explicit scenes and descriptions of violent crimes and rituals.
Americans are asking, who attacked our country?
You have declared a subliminal jihad against the United States. Can you tell us why?
Everything pertaining to what's happening has never come to the surface. The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives.
And night fell on a different world.
And Iblis is thinking, I should be getting this position, not Adam, and this guy is created from dirt.
And how does the army feel about you being head of the Temple of Set?
And the conspiracy theorists can say what they will, but
I want you to give me power over Adam, and I want you to give me soldiers and minions and all of these things.
The people have so much to glean and have such an ulterior motive for putting me in a position I'm in. We'll never let the true facts come aboard to the world.
And I want you to be able to give me the ability to whisper into the hearts of mankind.
And who was the Grotto leader?
Don't remember his name.
You don't remember the name of a person who involved you in murder?
now these people are in very high positions, yeah?
Yes.
Welcome back to Subliminal Jihad, episode 92. I am your co-host, Dimitri.
I'm Khaled.
And today, we're back already with another Grotto Q&A installment. We're playing catch up.
Trying to catch up. This is like kind of part 2 of 10, but it's like, we're just going to call it 11.
It's 11.
So it's not complicated.
Yeah, nice and simple. Yeah, we got like 11 questions to get to today, and I think we got some really interesting ones in there. So maybe we should just jump in and go for it, right?
Let's go. Yeah.
Okay. I'll read the first one.
Yeah.
This is from Red Arrow, and they ask, I'm curious what you guys think about the Israeli Nazi hunting operations in the 20th century. Do you think that those were a point of contention between U.S. and Israeli intelligence, or just a smokescreen for paperclip? Wow.
What do you think?
Well, since this question was asked, we did our episode about Martin Bormann. Yeah. And we've embarked on our series of like post-war Nazis in exile. And in the couple of books that we read about that, the question of like the Mossad and the Israeli like Nazi hunting operations came up. And I feel like it kind of sums up maybe how I'm looking at it right now. I'm curious to see more information of kind of like what lengths did they go to, and then why were there like some Nazis they went after and others they didn't. But it seemed like the general gist of it was they wanted to go after people who were like directly involved with planning the Holocaust, but unless there was like some other kind of reason to leave them alone. Because I don't know if you could really say Martin Bormann was not, involved in the planning of the Holocaust. You know what I mean? But like Adolf Eichmann was, it's like I don't see the real meaningful distinction between like Adolf Eichmann and Martin Bormann, but apparently the Mossad did to some extent.
Well, yeah, not to give Israel like too much credit for, wanting to kill Nazis, but I'm sure that a lot of them genuinely were like people in what became like the Israeli intelligence services. They were actually interested in killing Nazis or getting revenge for the Holocaust. I'm sure that was a pathology for a lot of people, but I think that was easily pushed to the wayside as soon as there were any kind of other considerations.
Totally. Like geopolitical
that wasn't a super high
considerations.
priority. Yeah, exactly.
And I have to assume to some extent that maybe their reticence to not go after certain Nazis did have something to do with things like Operation Paperclip and the U.S. sheltering and protecting these Nazis, because like as we've said many times, like I think we pretty roundly reject the like tail wagging the dog theory of like as critical as we are of Israel, the idea that like Israel made America like do 9/11 to itself, or like Israel made us like try to like overthrow Syria. Israel made us invade Iraq, and it's like there's elements going
like
on there where there's like
illusion or excuse, that we have to do this for Israel. I mean, Israel does have like a degree of autonomy in some way. In fact, I could see down the line like Israel coming under the auspices of another power and sort of breaking off from the U.S., but there's a very symbiotic relationship. And yeah, especially historically, like, yeah, you do want to avoid the tail wagging the dog in that. That goes into an even bigger thing in like the world of like conspiracies and things like that. There's always these, really Israel focused and Jew focused.
Exactly. You don't want to commit
topic.
what Lenin called the socialism of fools, anti-Semitic conspiracy theorizing. Instead, you want to do accurate conspiracy theorizing, which is to point out, the ruling class and like imperialism and how Israel like fits into that scheme. It does have a certain degree of like autonomy, but I think at the end of the day, they yield to the United States and what it wants to do, especially in something as delicate as
states in the world yield to the United States, or at least make concessions to them, make ample concessions to the United States. And I think that was definitely the case in this regard. I think that it's very easy to rationalize as well. Like the ultimate victory over the Nazis for Israel is like the continued existence and prosperity of Israel. So if like letting one guy go, who's ultimately defeated to like go off to South America or to go help build a rocket or do an MK Ultra experiment, etc., that is justifiable. If it comes, if it allows the sort of further protection and the good relationship with the U.S.
Yeah,
and even
the
good relationship with the Nazis in some cases. There were some people who were Nazis who just ended up working for Israel in some
as
capacities.
That one, I forget, it was a Gestapo or an SS veteran said, like, oh, the Mossad, they're good, but they learned everything they know from us. Maybe that was an exaggeration to some degree, but also, I mean, sometimes
Skorzeny,
certain things,
who
Skorzeny
has been sort of fingered as being, involved in the JFK assassination by some. He was someone who worked for Israel, for the Mossad after having been a Nazi. Our favorite rank in the SS, Obersturmbannführer.
Obersturmbannführer. Yeah. Wow. I mean, Cold Wars make strange bedfellows, right? And just as it might be shocking on the surface that some Nazis would choose to work with Israel, it might be shocking that the Mossad would, like, in some cases turn a blind eye to hunting certain Nazis or also hire them as like paramilitary trainers for your spy services. But if you look at it, like, you're right. I think you're really right that like for them, it's not necessarily like the victory over like fascism that defines like Israel's victory. It's the
certainly
persistence
not
of Israel
in the abstract. Yeah.
Not really. Yeah. And if you look at the battle
or
lines
even
of the Cold War,
anti-Semitism, really. Yeah. Like, you might say that, but
Well, I think you saw, what do you see in a transference? I think it's kind of like, I don't know, just seeing some like interviews with like Israelis on the street. I forget what video I watched like last year where a lot of them were just like voicing very casual opinions about how like we might just have to wipe out all the Palestinians or like they're animals, like they're animals. What do you expect us to do? And, just saying like really like kind of scary shit. And it's interesting, like the transference that occurred where like the real menace to Israel, to Jews and stuff, is now basically like Arabs and Muslims, like in the region, and they've basically taken on like the evil mantle that the Nazis held for a while. But now it's like, well, the Germans don't, have that mantle anymore. Even fascists from like other parts of the countries, like that, that maybe were allied with the Nazis. You saw in like a lot of arms trafficking stuff in like Iran-Contra, there were always Israeli connections, and Israel was involved in like supporting Solidarity in Poland and like subverting the Soviet Union. So they were comfortable on that, in the kind of the World Anti-Communist League, if you will, both like just ideologically, but also literally on the side of, like destroying Bolshevism, which is like that was the goal of the Nazis. So, it's inevitable they might come together.
As I think many have pointed out, Israel, in a way, especially today, like depends on or enjoys the idea of or profits from the existence of anti-Semitism in the world. Like they want anti-Semitism to exist, and if you look at like Israeli media or Israel sympathetic media in the United States, what they're always doing is portraying everywhere that's not Israel as an anti-Semitic hellhole. You know, and Israel has to exist because everywhere else is just rife with anti-Semitism. Even someone like Barry Weiss or whatever, you know,
for sure.
They're all about like anti-Semitism. And if there's anti-Semitism to verify or to validate their constant whining about anti-Semitism, all the better. Like, they want that to be the case. In the same way that, you know, during the sort of heyday of ISIS, you would always hear, like, Obama and his auxiliaries saying things like, they want, you know, Islamophobia. You know, they want to drive a wedge between Islam and the West, you know, or something like that. It's the same exact idea. And, I think that... Yeah, I think I mentioned this before. I think I might have mentioned in our Martin Bormann episode, but if you look at like early Israeli propaganda posters trying to encourage people to go out and work on kibbutz and come, you know, make whatever, like aliyah or whatever they call it to Israel, you know, it's always like a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, muscular, like it looks like a Nazi poster. You know, it's like a little bit more Art Deco, you know, but
no, for sure.
The imagery is very much like the muscular Jew, you know.
I mean, and you know, that never gets talked about also, like the kind of, I don't know, I think there is, I'm not Jewish, but like for my like life observations, I don't know, there's a certain like white, like high Ashkenazi privilege versus like, especially in the 20th century, because most of the Jews who were killed in the Holocaust were like poor Eastern European Jews who I think even in immigrant communities in America, the wealthier German and English Jews were more financially successful. They were like the lace curtain Jews or whatever, and they looked down upon the flood of like poor Jewish immigrants that were coming from like Poland and the Russian Empire and places like that, and probably looked down on like Sephardic Jews, I would imagine, as well. And so there's even like there was a class dynamic that, you know, while of course they really couldn't be Nazis, a lot of these people were like, you know, capitalists or whatever, and you know, and most of those people got out of the way of the Nazi menace very early and weren't killed in the Holocaust. And a lot of them went to Israel.
Yeah, there were people even like that guy who AOC really admired, the guy who wrote all those sort of self-help books based on his experience of being in Auschwitz, who, you know, it's horrible that he ended up in Auschwitz. I forget.
Eli Wiesel?
No, that's the guy who wrote Night, right? Yeah, I forgot that AOC is supposed to be Jewish. I mean, maybe...
Wait, AOC is supposed to be Jewish?
Yeah, she said she's Jewish.
What? Are you getting her mixed up with Salazar?
No, I'm not getting mixed. Yeah, I thought you were going to ask if that was the case.
Because she, I think, pretended to be Jewish.
Yes, Julia Salazar did pretend to be Jewish, but AOC also revealed her Jewish heritage at a Hanukkah celebration.
What?
Yes.
I didn't even know that. Yep, okay, you're right. In 2018, she revealed she's descended from Jews who fled Spain during the Spanish Inquisition. Her quote is, "I knew it. I sensed it." Okay. I mean, okay. Whatever.
I sensed it. I just had such a powerful connection when I was brought out to Israel to see, you know, how great it is. But yeah, I'm not sure. I need to look up the name of that guy. But he was like a doctor who did like weird like lobotomy experiments on people. Part of the reason why he ended up, you know, such a target was because he sort of rejected many opportunities to leave, because he still believed that there was an opportunity, you know, to make a life for himself, like to somehow fit into the Nazi vision despite being Jewish. Viktor Frankl? Yeah.
Oh,
Austrian
Viktor Frankl.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, Viktor Frankl.
Yeah, the founder of logotherapy. Yeah, now it's coming back to me, right?
Oh, yeah. This guy is interesting. Okay, he's Austrian. There were a number, actually, of Austrian, like Jewish Austrian doctors and psychologists and stuff who either fled, you know, Europe right before the war or like survived the Holocaust and then came to America. And there's one guy, Dr. Felix Polk, that we're definitely going to talk about one day, a Bay Area psychiatrist who died in a very extremely sketchy murder. But like, he's the kind of person that he might have been a CIA MK-Ultra doctor, but he's the kind of person that you would almost expect to be like a paperclip Nazi, but he was Jewish, so probably couldn't have been. But that doesn't mean... I think he also... That guy studied at the Tavistock Institute in the 60s and stuff, so...
I mean,
I think that, you know...
It's even... Like, the stuff that he did, like, under the Nazis is truly insane. Like, for one, there's an article called The Lie of Viktor Frankl in Tablet, which... Tablet is not, like, by any stretch, like, an anti-Zionist or, like, non-Israel sympathetic magazine at all. But they even wrote this article that is, like, in 1941, Dr. Viktor Frankl was the director of neurology at the Rothschild Hospital for Jews in Vienna. Austrian Jews were killing themselves at the rate of about 10 a day, and Frankl was determined to save them. Frankl tried to bring the suicidal patients back by injecting them with amphetamines, but it didn't work. And so Frankl bored holes in the skulls of his Jewish patients who had taken overdoses of pills in hopes of escaping their Nazi tormentors and jolted their brains with Pervitin, an amphetamine popular in the Third Reich. The suicidal patients revived, but only for 24 hours. One wonders what agonies they went through in their last day of life, with Frankl's amphetamines coursing through their trepanned heads.
Jeez.
All right.
Wait, and so AOC, like, praised Viktor Frankl.
Yeah, she did. I mean, he, like, had a whole career after surviving Auschwitz as kind of, like, a new agey self-help guy. But, yeah, he, like, this article, I think, makes an interesting point. And this is kind of shows the way that some of these convergences happen. It says, the Nazis, in fact, shared Frankl's goal of preventing Jews from killing themselves, since they had decreed Jewish suicide to be illegal. And I think that that's the case, actually, in a way, with how Nazis perceive Zionism. I mean, they weren't fond of Jews, period, but when you had to make a determination between whether you like the idea of Jews all going out to Palestine and staying in Europe, obviously you would prefer the former. And that is what many Nazis expressed. But anyway, so this is the sort of point that Frankl had a different motive. He clung to the hope that Jews could have a life worth living in a Europe ruled by the Nazis. Even after the war began, Frankl stubbornly refused to believe that Hitler's regime was a death sentence for Jews like him. In November 1941, Frankl received a visa to emigrate to the United States from Austria, but he decided to stay. He could not imagine being a well-to-do Jewish doctor in Manhattan, he wrote after the war, at the cost of abandoning the people he loved. So he decided to stay and thought that maybe it would be okay, So I think there's
interesting
a lot of things like that.
Yeah, I'm reading a Psychology Today article from 2017 saying, is it okay to criticize a saint on humanizing Viktor Frankl? I guess there's a psychology PhD, Timothy Pytel, who wrote maybe a book called On Authoritarian Therapy. And I guess this guy got a lot of flack for questioning certain aspects of Frankl's kind of life and biography. And a lot of people like lashed out at him hard and said, you are going to have friends you don't want and enemies you don't need. But I'm not sure exactly what. I just saw because it was in a reply from AOC, which I think it looks like it was deleted. That was like, great read for today. Like, Man Search for Meaning by Victor blah, blah, blah.
Man Search for Meaning, yeah.
Yeah, that was in 2019 when she said that. And Club de Cordelier posted that basically because of his involvement in ghoulish Nazi medical experiments, none of Viktor Frankl's works, including the one recommended by AOC, are sold in the bookstore of the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. More on AOC's hero, Viktor Frankl, whose life story, quote, exemplifies the experience of many Austrians whose response to Nazism was some mixture of resistance, accommodation, and collaboration, and after the war, denial and burial of the past. And, she did that on Holocaust Memorial Day. She recommended this guy's book. I'm not sure. I guess he was also a fraud.
Well, yeah, he wasn't, like, qualified to perform brain surgery or anything like that, but he did. He bored holes in people's skulls and gave them amphetamines to, like, resurrect them when they tried to commit suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess he mischaracterized his stay in Auschwitz a little bit, which is obviously a very touchy subject.
He made up a bunch of lies about what happened there. He had himself, like, giving an inspiring speech in his book, things like that.
Really?
Like,
wow.
Probably didn't happen.
It says that he was just held there in depot briefly and then shipped to Dachau, where he was numbered and shaved. But anyways, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's a thorny relationship, I think, when it comes to the Mossad hunting Nazis and also their relationship with the U.S. intelligence,
Yeah, it's a touchy subject, but I think that when one looks into it, there's a lot of convergence that happens between, like, because outside of, like, the extreme, the final solution that Martin Bormann engineered, where he was going to massacre all the Jews in Europe. I mean, before that, there were things like the Havara Agreement, where they tried to work out emigration of a bunch of German Jews to Palestine. And definitely now we see in the way that Israel's sort of racial politics and sort of ethnic politics and identitarian politics manifest. There are definitely similarities there. I mean, like the whole idea of like, Lebensraum and things like that. There's a lot of resonance between sort of the ideas core to Zionism. And it's not that like Zionism was something that was, a beautiful idea. It certainly conceptually isn't as horrible as it's ended up being in the way that Israel has evolved. But there definitely there was opposition to Zionism at the time. There were many Jews who already were living in Palestine, but they weren't, like an oppressive ethno-state.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. There was a ton of opposition within the Jewish community to the idea of Zionism, and it was associated with that kind of fascist politics.
Definitely.
For instance, like the extermination of Yiddish, because it wasn't, it was tainted in some way.
Well, see, that's an example of kind of like that sort of that bias against like the poor Eastern European Jews is that a lot of them primarily spoke Yiddish, which is like a mix of all these like, Slavic languages and German and all these other things. And so that has been, it almost is extinguished, except in certain, probably the Lubavitchers, I think, still speak it.
Yeah.
But even the Lubavitchers are like anti-Israel, which is kind of funny because they're extremely like religious and traditionalist, but they think that Israel is a a false, almost like an antichrist attempt to bring about like the Messiah or something like that.
Right. Like,
and so,
until the Messiah comes, like the temple can't come back, there can't be Israel or something like that. I don't know exactly what the rationale behind it is, but
are they anti-Semites? I mean, I'm sure. I don't know.
Well, some people, they would just dodge that somehow, you know. Because you can't be opposed to Israel without being anti-Semitic. You simply can't.
There's no legitimate criticism of Israel.
It cannot happen.
Says Wes Bapman. Yeah.
You want to kill every single Jew, just murder them all.
Like Stalin.
Yeah, just like Stalin. He tried
Like he would have. Yeah, he tried.
He tried.
Okay.
But anyway, so I think we got kind of away from the question a little bit. We went off on a tangent, as usual, but to summarize, I think that, there was some contention, but also I think that, like, the Israeli intelligence and the sort of people who were doing the Nazi hunting, the sort of architects of the Nazi hunting operations in Israel after the war, were in many ways willing to let this slide in the name of higher goals, which they saw as being opposed to, the extermination of Jews that Nazis attempted to bring about.
For sure. Okay. Well, do you want to read the next question?
Yeah, I'll do 8. All right. 8. Piss asks. Nice. Okay.
Cool.
What's up with the dracularity of Nick Land and the CCRU? According to The Guardian, after the renegade group was basically ousted from Warwick, Land and some members moved to Leamington, and several members moved into the house that Aleister Crowley was born in. Apparently, this is around the time they started getting more into the occult. Then Land was flirting with NRX and his weird hyper-racism thing and everything in the mid-2010s. Though I believe he has distanced himself formally from the NRX movement, his Twitter has heavy boomer vibes, it's true. Of course, Land and the CCRU's ideas have percolated up in the alt-o-sphere. Capitalism as demonic AI from the future, accelerationism, philosophy of Bitcoin, and even spin-off schools of thought like speculative materialism. Now Land lives in Neo-Shanghai. I'm not sure what to make of it all. He's a huge sus lord.
Big sus lord.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that any of Nick Land's work was really that compelling or interesting at any time, but I mean, I think that piss, your analysis is quite spot on in that, the development of all these ideas that we see all the time, like, capitalism as like this sort of Lovecraftian stuff, which is like cute, but I don't know, I find it a little bit kitschy and a little bit corny. Maybe it's just so played out. Like, we talked a little bit about Reza Aslan and Cyclonopedia, and I think that
Reza Nagarastani.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Reza Aslan. Oh my god, a different Reza. Reza Shah Pahlavi in his book. Cyclonopedia. No, but Reza Nagarastani, and I think that part of the reason why maybe, not to say that he isn't like, cringe in some of the same ways still, but I think that part of the reason maybe why he's soured on that book, as seems to be the case, is because of how sort of Nick Landy, like, some of it is. Like, the whole idea of hyperstition, of sort of creating reality through belief or practice. Hyperstition, speculative materialism, the same sort of idea. I don't know, but now he is just this weird, I think, in a way, it's the banal, it's like very pernicious, but there definitely is a banality to this type of pernicious thing, where like, of course, now he's just like a run-of-the-mill conserva boomer who's like pooping his diaper over, like woke culture or something, and like talking about how like Trump will save us all. Like,
he's ranting about cancel culture on Substack.
Yeah.
So I tried reading one of his most recent articles about like crypto and philosophy, and it was so kind of try hard with like its like academic paper like structuring of like the different sections, and it started with like 12 different quotes, which started off almost like kind of interesting, but he has like a very boomery like techno optimism of just like, wow, crypto is like what we've all been waiting for, but then just like buries it and just like philosophical like theory brain gibberish that doesn't mean anything. Like it's just stupid. Like, I don't want to have to go back and read a bunch of Guattari or like Deleuze to like have to parse what the fuck he's talking about, because at the end of the day, like, he's not I don't know, like, what's the point of being such an edgy radical if you're not even that intellectually curious about like what you're talking about, except to spin a bunch of like obscure ass theories. And I don't know, like, his influence, it is interesting how he seems to have had a lot of influence, and the CCRU crew in general, and like Mark Fisher, who I don't know, like these guys just started to really like pop up on the scene, and I started seeing them talked about, around like maybe 2015, 2016. And then in like after Trump came around, and like people learned about like neo-reactionaries and like Curtis Yarvin, who still is like
people are
kind
still,
of has a
like,
weird respect. People have a respect for him.
Yeah. Well, because I think there's like this thing where people, imagine a conservative as being like, this like movie Bob, where he's like, they're all drinking toxic water, and they're just stupid subhumans and zombies and orcs. And like, so when they see someone who politically is like fascist, or who believes in like some kind of monarchical hyper authoritarian government or something, and espouses it in an intellectual way, they're like just agog and in awe. That even happened with Richard Spencer, who isn't like, an intellectual juggernaut by any stretch, but I just think that it's the dissonance between like the sort of archetype of this like slack-jawed yokel who is, voting against his own interests because, he's religious or something.
Well, do you think it's like people like Movie Bob though that are like even noticing like people like Nick Land?
Well, I think that I don't know if Movie Bob himself
ostensibly
notices him, but I think that it is, well, for instance, like people like Richard Spencer. Richard Spencer, I think, is sort of a pop intellectual version of Nick Land. Like, Nick Land published his hyper racism article on alternative right?
Back in 2014. So
I think that
phrase was on the map.
And I think that's sort of the sort of mystification at Richard Spencer and his ability to sort of argue for his ideas like in a sort of intellectual language, and to kind of at least go to something resembling philosophical first principles. I think that a lot of people were sort of dumbstruck by that, and like really in many ways bamboozled because of their inability to do that themselves about their own beliefs, which is a very important thing to be able to do. Like, I remember there was this play that came out called like Heroes of the Fourth Turning, and it was just about like, these pseudo-intellectual right-wingers, kind of like Vermeule or something,
Or Bannon. He's
like,
obsessed with the
or
fourth
even
turning.
Bannon, like, he read a single book, That's like the thing. Like, people are in awe of this. But on a more interesting tact, perhaps, I think that stuff of like sort of, post-humanities, like, or the idea of like hyperstition or, accelerationism, maybe like beyond the human in some way, or like I think that's actually had an influence in like the sort of quote unquote left, or at least like, post-structuralist mainstream of academia that Nick Land is sort of inveighing against, like this idea of, like imagining a sort of new paradigm and an emphasis on cybernetics or even a magic and different epistemologies. Like, some of that stuff I think has like had an impact on, like, you could say there's a similarity between that and like, even a Donna Haraway or a Karen Barad.
Oh yeah, I could see that. Yeah, Donna Haraway, like, we need to make kin with critters and reimagine. Well, I don't know. Yeah, but then she like gives like Kamala Harris money.
Manifesto predates what Nick Land was doing, but I think that maybe some of his stuff bleeds into that same general trend.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it has to have a little bit of a constituency in Silicon Valley. I'm
sure that it does.
Big Peter Thiel vibes from this whole milieu.
Yeah.
I would see that, like, he's somebody. I think he is keeping something. I forget what it's called. I think it's called Urbit. This thing that's like in beta right now that I think Curtis Yarvin was like the progenitor of, but it was being built by like a foundation that has like gotten a ton of money from Peter Thiel, and it's supposed to be like a trustless, like, blockchain based, like, on Ethereum kind of distributed internet that like isn't controlled by central servers, which I guess maybe is like the white whale for certain Silicon Valley libertarians. And I don't know, like, at the same time, like, Nick Land nowadays is like living in Shanghai, and like, I don't know if he's still talking about hyper racism. I went back and read that essay from 2014, and it's like a bunch of just like ramblings about about eugenics, but like he's talking about it in a kind of race realism kind of way, and talking about like normal racism is like going to be superseded, like both like woke tottery that wants to like blend our genetic pools together into like one, utopian, like, undifferentiated mass, and then the kind of normal racists that want to keep the gene pools somewhat regulated by these conceptions of like nationhood and race and whatever. They're both going to get superseded by this new technological like age that we're going to move into, where the wealthy and like the elite superclass. He brings up like a weird kind of interesting quote that somebody was kind of a bizarre thing that somebody was speculating about, like how space, like when we start space colonizing, then the people like that are going to be chosen, he's quoting somebody else here, the people that are going to be chosen are probably going to be along the same lines that we choose our astronauts, which means they're going to be like better. Oh, here he says Gregory Cochran.
Right, yeah, they're going to eugenically be better, so then
he suggests space colonization will inevitably function as a highly selective genetic filter unless extreme political intervention is taken to prevent this. Quote, one generally assumes that space colonists, assuming that there ever are any, will be picked individuals, somewhat like existing astronauts, the best out of hordes of applicants. They'll be smarter than average, healthier than average, saner than average, and not just by a little. Since all these traits are significantly heritable, some highly so we have to expect that their descendants will be different above the neck. They likely be on average smarter than any existing ethnic group. If a lunar colony really took off, early colonists might account for a disproportionate fraction of the population, just as Puritans do in the U.S., and the loonies might continue to have inordinate amounts of the right stuff indefinitely. I just thought that was hilarious because it's like, I don't know, it's like validating this weird eugenic like theory that like upper, like high wasps in like New England fucking think about themselves, that like somehow they were of like the hardiest Puritan stock, so that's why they're all still in control of like Northern Trust and all the insurance companies, and are like massively overrepresented in politics and business and culture and society, etc. So I mean, I don't know, instead of attacking that, he's taking this very seriously.
Right.
He's taking this very seriously.
Well, exactly. He's thinking on another level than we foolish people who are concerned with racism. You know, that's all going to become irrelevant once we have like a Gattaca class of super engineered people. And then by that standard, the racists and the anti-racists of today will then be, you know, practically speaking, in an alliance against the new
in a defensive fraternity.
A defensive fraternity,
when they recognize that traditionally differentiated human populations are being torn asunder on an axis of variation that dwarfs all of their established concerns. The end.
Yeah,
nice. I mean, you know, like he's getting at like an interesting idea there, but I feel like his positionality with it is just like off somewhere else that I can't really I can't connect with, you know? Like for me, that's kind of like, okay, it sounds like the global elites are going to want to start engineering people or engineering themselves or their own children, you know, just in the way that they seek so many material advantages for their children today. Once you can throw CRISPR and genetic editing into the mix, yeah, like that, unless there is an extreme political intervention, I could totally see that happening in the next like 10 years, 15 or 20 years for sure. And that is gonna bring about like, I don't know, and you even think about stuff today, like with, I don't know, like vaccine mandates, like excluding people from society to such a degree over getting like an mRNA shot. But then if you take that logic further, then it's like, are we going to have like these different like genetic classifications for people that have had certain medications and ones that haven't? And, you know, is a regular old human without these enhancements going to be seen as kind of like an old operating system or an inferior operating system? Like, I don't fucking know how that's going to play out. But I feel like also like it doesn't make me want to get on the side of like accelerationists, like bringing this into being. You know what I mean?
No.
Like that doesn't seem like the right play. And so I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, well, I never feel like the politics like is ever really clearly stated. Like, you know, this really is very similar to Richard Spencer in a way. I even saw like a while ago on Richard Spencer's podcast, he was like musing about UFOs. It's really not that much there's not that big of a difference between that and this type of thing. You know, it's like, oh, I'm racist, but like I'm intellectual about it, you know? Yeah, I almost feel like he's not necessarily condemning this. Yeah, because it has sort of accelerationist thing. He's almost positioning himself as being the one who's going to, you know, I detect a little bit of like something that you see a lot in these type of writers where they just sort of describe and they don't really take a position. And, you know, it's like you can see it in like Vermeule's writing, you know, like the sort of wink wink. But I feel like they're, you know, what they're really saying is that, yeah, I want this to happen. I look forward to like this, you know, eventuality. I guess that's kind of the point of accelerating things towards that. But yeah, I
guess so. Yeah, it's just, but I feel like he is kind of getting seen more as like a boomer these days. Like I don't think he has like the dark power that he had. I don't even think if you go on like, you know, 4chan or something that you would find people praising at the altar, you know, worshiping at the altar of Nick Land.
Yeah, it's really crazy to think like Mark Fisher, the great vampire castle. I mean, there you go. The vampire castle is a great example. Like, again, like the metaphor is like kind of stupid and like, you know, it's sort of just like that whole essay is just like dumb whining and hand wringing over like getting called white on Twitter. And it all like hangs itself on this lofty metaphor of a vampire castle. And he really came out of the same milieu as Nick Land.
Literally.
He actually came out of the CCRU, right? Yeah, he did.
I think we have a question down the list here about Zero Books, so I think we'll come back. Maybe we'll save our comments on Mark Fisher. Well, it's interesting to note,
since we were just talking about Viktor Frankl injecting people with amphetamines, it is interesting that like, you know, it's an interesting little synchronicity that both of these questions kind of have to do with amphetamines, because didn't Nick Land, like, not only drive himself crazy on amphetamines, but, like, that was the reason why he ended up getting thrown out, because he was dealing, like, meth to his students or something? I think.
I forget if that's exactly what he was doing, but he definitely became like a huge speed freak and kind of went into like an amphetamine psychosis for a while. And I think that's when he first started embracing like race realism, like hyper racism, which is I mean, the way he describes it in the article, I guess the hyper racism would be like this genetically enhanced like thing, but then like why aren't you like against that? Like, you know, it sounds like he's got some Adderall brain, like big time. I think if you push it too far,
he got to the neurotoxicity stage probably. He was just doing like endless amphetamines and like living in Aleister Crowley's house and like drawing occult diagrams on the wall with all his grad students and the other
amphetamines and the left-hand path do not go well together.
I mean, in a way they do, but like,
well, I mean,
they're both bad.
Like the Nazis were
Neurons
all on
don't make it
amphetamines,
right.
you know.
Yeah.
Coincidence? Only somewhat. Yeah, you wouldn't have the Blitzkrieg without amphetamines, literally. So yeah, I mean, not the best thing if you want to really. I don't know. Like there's just like there is a kind of like cold Adderall disconnect from, I think, especially this like the little samples of later stuff and things I've seen him write. Like, I don't know if he's still on that stuff, but it feels like his brain has been rewired.
I
into
doubt
like a
he's
cyborg.
not on it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Who knows? But
I mean, maybe he's not abusing it to the same level anymore. I'm just gonna go. I just want to go see what Outsideness is up to, like right now. What's the most recent?
I think it was the Bitcoin one that was just kind of like ugh, whatever.
While extremely unenthusiastic about the fact that Zuck doing it, this meta shit is gonna be huge. Okay?
See, he ends up just being a cheerleader for like Silicon Valley accelerationism.
Yeah.
Like they're the biggest. Zuck is the biggest fucking accelerationist of them all.
He's not thrilled about that, but yeah. And then there's a bunch of whining about, is wokeness the politics of female mental illness?
Oh my god! Cool. Yeah, this is productive.
And then there's some more about taking Succession seriously from Zero Hedge, you know, not guest written by Michael Schur, surprisingly. Well, just accelerate anything, except for, I guess, vaccine mandates. He's against that. That's all.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, wow, he's like reposting Zero Hedge and stuff. That kind of makes sense. He does have a kind of
professional position strongly predicts wokeness in its occupant. That is a reliable sign it simply shouldn't exist. The entire political energy of the right should be directed towards a world in which it doesn't exist. The only way to win a class war is to wage it as a class war, aiming at the economic destruction of the enemy. This is my least favorite thing in the world, like the obfuscation of class and like the transformation of it into like basically different sides in a culture war or different classes. Like it's the biggest like illusory, horrible psyop ever. Like it, I mean...
Yeah, kind of recasting. Like you mean like the kind of Tucker populism of like standing up for workers, but it means like standing up for the workers that like side
Trump
with you on culture. Yeah, like
exactly.
Like if somebody
Trump
sides with you in the culture
he eats
worker.
McDonald's like that. You know,
it's a bunch of signifiers
politics.
and stuff like,
and not anything material. And just anybody who writes wokeness with a capital W, like and writes in these grandiose terms, I can't deal with it. It's just like too corny and boomery.
That is as cringe as writing folks with an X.
Yes, it is. It is absolutely.
You know,
but literally, almost all of his tweets are like contain the word wokeness or woke with a capital W.
God, he's got that SEO booming right now.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, when in doubt, just attack the woke tats. They're so easy
woke
to
tats.
attack.
Yeah, they're anyway. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. It's like shooting octopus lovers in a barrel.
Yeah, I found a spooky like essay about too long to go through right now called Uncle Al and Uncle Bill in the 21st Century about William S. Burroughs, Aleister Crowley, and like the influence on people like Nick Land and like Genesis P-Orridge and all these other and Scottish comic book writer Grant Morrison, who overhauled ailing marquee titles such as Justice League of America, The X-Men, and The Flash, who wrote a Burroughsian-influenced conspiracy theory titled The Invisibles. His websites are hotbeds of debate concerning magical technique, Burroughs, Crowley, drugs, the beats, and related topics. I don't know where he put mysterious sigils in his books. I don't fucking know. Anyways, yeah, that's it. I mean, we'll come back to that later. But okay, you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, we'll move on. Farewell, Nick Land.
Farewell.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll hear from you again, I'm sure. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Moving on to
Okay, so all right, this is from B. Blanche Salavi, and they write, I'm looking for help identifying an obscure, to me, neo-Nazi religious doctrine. The author writes, quote, I assume this is like some other author who's
this
not
is
identified?
not well.
Okay.
He's trying to find out what this doctrine is. Whoever is authoring it, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Tricky question here, but okay, we'll read. This is quite a quote here. I am a traditionalist and a national socialist. I believe that there is order inherent in the universe, that this order is capitalized, by the way, is characterized by hierarchy and differentiation, and that human beings are happiest when their societies reflect this order. Humans naturally exist as part of an ethno-cultural organic unities,
Master race making an agreement error here. Anyway, sorry.
These ethno-cultural organisms are the only basis of nations, and that social institutions should reflect their nation and serve the entirety of society. I am opposed to Judaism and to all Judeo-occult religions and doctrines, those being the religions and doctrines derived from the Kabbalah. I have the Dath of the Kabbalah. Basically, Judaism is the religion of the devil, and its spread is part of the devil's plan to enslave and exterminate the human race, the United States having been created for that purpose. Specifically, Kabbalah begins with the eye or great eye of Freemasonry, which is a pathway into the Sitra Ahra, or darkness. It teaches that within this darkness, all light congealed into the Shekinah, which is the substance of all creation. Yahweh, YHWH, 2, the seven-headed serpent, appeared in the darkness, and by dividing the Shekinah, he created the seven lower worlds, including this world of Malkuth. Gazing into his creation, Yahweh saw his rage reflected as in a mirror, and this caused him to separate into two, Yahweh the Messiah, who remained in the darkness, and Yahweh the Shaitan, who fell into our world. Now Judah, who also emerged from this division, and who is both Christ and Antichrist, has brought man the tree of life, advancement through which leads man back to darkness, making him a tzedek, giving him the power to tikkun olam, which is to reconcile Yahweh and Shaitan back into a single being. I also know the original of the false Kabbalistic teaching of Para 186 Supra. Yahweh is Lucifer, originally the brightest of the angels, misled by Judah. He created this world in imitation of the true God's heaven of pure light. The act of creation made Yahweh the demiurge, or lesser creator, and it also left him with a creation of light mixed with darkness. When the true God discovered this act of rebellion, he expelled Yahweh from heaven with all the angels that had assisted him, and trapped him in this world as a place of punishment. Judaism preaches hatred for mankind because it falsely exalts Yahweh as the highest God and is focused on the work of this world, which is the punishment of the beings trapped here. Encoded into the Kabbalah are also social control techniques known as the royal art, which is the art of ruling men by deception. Parentheses, apologies for the wall of text. The author is extremely hostile to groups identifying as satanic. Wow, that's okay, what the fuck?
You know what? This to me, like all the elements of this seem like pretty consistent with like your esoteric Hitlerism, like your standard esoteric Hitlerism, like
Savitri
Devi.
Okay.
Even more like classical esoteric Hitlerism. Yeah, like Savitri Devi, like the Gnosticism element, which is obvious and like the sort of Genesis narrative of everything. The Yahweh is Satan. The kind of demiurgic idea, and
that's
then also,
directly from like the Gnostic Gospels, right?
Well, it's like a permutation of the ideas you see like in Gnosticism. Yeah, pretty much.
That Jehovah is actually Yahweh, who.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Like, I'm the God, you're God. You know, that's all like him boasting, and it's a lie, and the real God is like the higher God of pure
Pistis Sophia
and light.
In some of the books.
Pistis Sophia is being like an emanation, of the true one, but as you said, it varies. But I think that and also like a big giveaway is the sort of use of Sanskrit type words at one point, right? So it's the Sitra Ahra.
Okay.
That seems like to be.
That sounds a little bit Sanskrit, like
I think it is
Indian.
I'm looking up Sitra Ahra right now. Esoteric Hitlerism.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so rare to come across like all the like a wall of text like this, but like not have the author cited.
I wonder. I hope that this wasn't urgent. That this person needed this information in any way.
I'm about to marry this great guy, but I found his blog, and
Oh, I guess Sitra Achra is an Aramaic thing. Sitra. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I could have figured that out. But
yeah, I mean, it sounds like esoteric Hitlerism, kind of anti-Freemasonry, anti-Kabbalah, but also Gnostic.
And I think that esoteric Hitlerism is also like anti-satanic too, generally.
I guess as opposed to like 09A, which is like satanic Nazism.
Yeah, although they'll even kind of do the same thing where they're like, I'm not satanic, you know, we're not satanic, we're actually feminists and we believe in, you know, the acausal or something. I don't know. Like, they'll go back and forth. There's no real coherent, like, thing that they converge on in the 09A so much, but this does seem to be kind of in the Savitri Devi tradition of esoteric Hitlerism, even if the Sitra Achra isn't maybe a Sanskrit thing as I thought. I guess it's from Aramaic, meaning just like the other side. Oh, Achra, maybe like Achara? I don't know, but anyway, or like
I'm not really sure. Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
I tried to look up Kabbalah, the royal art. Not getting any hits here. So.
Yeah, I think like I'm gonna try to see if I can find something that just really like resonates with this, because I've definitely seen things like that before. Maybe Miguel Serrano. Yeah, if you look up Miguel Serrano, you might find something pretty similar to some of this. I think his ideas also were pretty similar. You know, he was a big esoteric Hitlerist.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Miguel Serrano.
Yeah. Chilean diplomat, writer, occultist, and fascist activist. I love some of these people's like little bios.
Right. Oh, yeah. Miguel Serrano Fernandez.
He came back to Chile after...
He got fired when Allende won. When Allende... And then he returned to Chile in 1973 after Pinochet got in. Yes. And became a prominent organizer in the Chilean neo-Nazi movement, holding annual celebrations of Hitler's birthday, organizing a neo-Nazi rally in Santiago, and producing a neo-Nazi political manifesto. He wrote a trilogy of books on Hitler in which he outlined his view of the Nazi leader as an avatar. Wow. Yes. In 2008, he was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Universidad Mayor of Santiago. After Savitri Devi, he has been considered the most prominent exponent of esoteric Hitlerism within the neo-Nazi movement. Jeez.
Yes. It would be a good episode, like, to do one about all these people, because they have, like, some truly off-the-wall ideas. A lot of it is kind of that sort of strange, like, Aryanist spin on Hinduism.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Savitri Devi was big on that, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, you know, swastika, it's a symbol.
That's true.
Yeah. This is just from Wikipedia. In this arcane work, Serrano unfolds his ultimate philosophical testament, the arcane work being Adolf Hitler, El Ultimo Avatara. Adolf Hitler, the last avatar. It sounds like an M. Night Shyamalan movie. Anyway, in this arcane work, he unfolds his
Blitzkriegers, there's amphetamines all around you.
Yeah, why won't you fight? Yeah, werewolves.
Werewolves. There's prescription grade speed all around you. No, this is really weird about him. He in late 1941, his friend Gallo suggested Serrano could support the German and Italian war effort not just through his publications, but also on the etheric inner planes, introducing him to an esoteric order sympathetic to Nazism. Serrano later claimed that this order had been founded near the start of the 20th century by a German migrant known as FK. Serrano was initiated into the group in February 1942. FK claimed that the group owed its allegiance to a secretive Brahmin elite who resided in the Himalayas. Its practices included Kundalini yoga with ceremonial magic and expressed a pro-Nazi position. It espoused a belief in an astral body which could be awakened through various rituals and meditative practices. The group revered the Nazi German leader Adolf Hitler as the savior of the Aryan race and presented him as a Shuddhi Buddhi Shvababa, an initiate of an immense willpower who had voluntarily incarnated onto Earth to assist in the overthrow of the Kali Yuga, a present dark age for humanity. FK claimed that through the astral realm, he was able to establish a connection with Hitler, during which they had various conversations. Wow. Actually, interestingly, as the war ended, Serrano was convinced that Hitler had not committed suicide in Berlin, as was claimed by the victorious Allies. Instead, Serrano believed that Hitler had escaped and was living in Antarctica, either in a secluded, warm environment on the continent or under the ice cap itself. Wow, the idea had been suggested to him by FK, who claimed that he remained in astral contact with Hitler, but was also widely rumored in the Latin American press. In 1947, Ladislao Szabo's book, Hitler est Vivo, had been published, exerting an influence on Serrano. Szabo's book alleged that a U-boat convoy had taken Hitler to stay in Queen Maud Land. In 1947-48, Serrano traveled to Antarctica as a journalist with the Chilean army. In 1948, he wrote his own short book, La Antártica y otros mitos, which repeated Szabo's claims about Hitler's survival. In 1951, he traveled to Europe and in Germany visited various sites associated with the Nazi Party, including Hitler's Berlin bunker, his Berghof home, and Spandau prison. During his trip, he also visited Switzerland, where he met and befriended the writer Hermann Hesse and the psychoanalyst Carl Jung. Whoa, okay. Wow. Okay. He did visit in the 60s. Wow, he became the Chilean ambassador to Yugoslavia in the 1960s. And then was the ambassador to Austria, always a sus position, and he actually he paid several visits to the co-founder of the Ahnenerbe, Hermann Wirth, the designer and occultist Wilhelm Landig, the poet Ezra Pound, and the traditionalist thinker Julius Evola. And he also established friendships with a number of individuals involved in the old Nazi movement, including Otto Skorzeny, Leon Degrelle, and some other people. He also discussed issues with the ancient astronaut proponent Robert Charroux.
Yeah, well, he was also basically into like Atlantis and Hyperboreanism and stuff like that.
That is wild. We could do a whole episode on this fucking guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
This guy's he pops up everywhere.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
And modern pagans, I guess, started adopting his ideas in the 90s. In the pagan religion of heathenry, with a capital H.
Awesome. Yeah.
That's cool. Contemporary German neo-paganism. So, yeah, I don't know where that shit comes from, but it could be from...
Yeah, I think that there is a clear influence here. For instance, he writes in his foreword to Hitler, The Last Avatar, "This is not a book. It is a musical mystery and mysticism, darkness and light, esoteric symbolism, astral travel, master and pupil, and so much more. A book describing the ongoing, titanic, and eternal battle between gods and devils, between a dark force, a satanic spirit, and a coming or returning Hyperborean Aryan age." And he goes on to talk about the influence of Masonry and of Kabbalah, and how Kabbalah is just an adulterated form of the true Aryan science, and everything like that. So
yeah, I'm reading about his like stories about the Hyperboreans. They sound very like the Urantia book. Like he even talks about the black, yellow, and red races and how they were just animals or like human robots. And then the Hyperboreans like mated with them, and so we got our like giants, archons kind of theory mixed in, and with some Gnosticism and shit. Yeah, wow, there's a lot there. So that it's probably from that kind of circle where this shit kind of comes from, I would imagine.
Yes. For Aryans, atoms have never been numeric, abstract, empty formulas. This is him inveighing against Einstein for being Jewish, I guess, against relativity and atomic and quantum physics. I mean, the
ultimate culture war about relativity.
I mean, I'm not super down with relativity. I mean, I want to do our episode on the Copenhagen deception soon, but his take on it is pretty funny. He says, "For Aryans, atoms have never been numeric, abstract, empty formulas. They are gnomes, magic runes, the atomic gods. For the Jew, only that which can be known positively is real, without blood, without flesh, without earthly incarnation, without form, without spiritual sun." Okay, Nick Land.
Okay. Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
This is a lot of synchronicities there with like the esoteric, whatever. Yeah. So, I mean, not all people, I think we have discussed before, just because you're anti-Satan doesn't mean you're not sus. This would be a good example.
For sure.
Of...
There's many, many more. I mean, it's like just such a like bizarre anomalous, like, sad reflection on our state of affairs that there are people who are, like, openly pro-Satan, but, like, generally most people are not super pro-Satan, and there's many sus people, you know, who are anti-Satan. I mean, Satan basically, despite what, you know, you'll get people in your menchies trying to protest, like, Satan basically just is a stand-in for evil, you know. It's a personification of an evil will, or, you know, whatever is dark in this life. So the idea of use it in that sense, including sus people, but
like liberating the symbol of Satan into being like a symbol of progress doesn't really make sense.
Generally not, I would say. You know, like, yeah, I get, you know, if you're like, if this person's like saying, oh, you know, Jews are satanic, like, you know, I hate Satan, I'm a Nazi, then maybe you're like, well, maybe Satan's not that bad. I mean, although he's also against, like, you know, anything that's like not Hitlerist, like bizarre paganist worship of like atomic gods and Arianism and like, you know, bizarre shit, you know. He like believes in the protocols. He's yes. But anyway, yeah, like, I mean, there's definitely people who are anti-Satan, but like, you know, in what they profess, who are worse than people who are like, who profess like loving Satan and being Satanists even. You know, it's not
I've known like, I mean, very
Satan
sweet,
very
like,
tricky,
you know,
it's not
like metal people that have like
Morbid
all these like
is not as bad as Miguel Serrano, despite Miguel Serrano being against Satan.
For sure. But I think that always is a trick, and I feel like it's a trick that a lot of people get pulled on them, like in today's culture, of thinking that because a bunch of hypocrites like say they love God and hate Satan, but then you find out they're hypocrites, therefore that means that the opposite is true. It just means they're hypocrites. Like, it doesn't mean that Satan's actually a good... They weren't lying to you that Satan's a bad guy. They're just using that in a manipulative way to cover their own satanic complicities.
I mean, the standard strategy of Satan, like, generally has been to make you think something evil and satanic isn't evil and satanic, is in fact good. Now somehow people are like, oh, that's evil and satanic, dope, which is like, you know, quite, you know, tragic state of affairs. But
I think of like Pat
still,
Robertson or somebody really toxic, or like a homophobe like preacher or something like that.
Exactly.
You know, people who won't bake a cake for like a lesbian couple. You know, like like they think of those types of people and like, well, I'm against what they stand for, and they say they're against Satan, so therefore wanting to bake a wedding cake for lesbians is satanic and good. It's like, no, wait, no. It's just,
I mean,
it's just good.
Me...
It's not, it doesn't mean that they're actually being satanic, you know. That's what I feel like.
No, a friend of mine said something similar about how, like, you know, there used to be an idea, like, that people who had like darker skin, you know, kind of like a colorism, that would associate, you know, people with darker skin, like kind of in Central Asia, with like demons or with jinn. And then he was observing sort of a new trend where people would be like, you know, wanting to be jinn, like kind of like in YA literature, things like that, you know, saying like, yeah, I am a half jinn. It's like,
in a TikTok
no,
way.
like the whole point is like that we want to be seen as human. Like, we don't want to embrace and like reclaim being jinn. What they said, to dehumanize us, you know, and like deny our humanity.
That's
like,
a good point.
We want to, you know, it's sort of a similar thing where like, yeah, it's kind of like, oh, I'll just reclaim being like demonic and I'll reclaim Satan because you're saying that what I'm doing is satanic in some way, or you know, what you don't like, which, you know, is not bad, or like your perception of what satanic is wrong or something. I'll embrace Satan. But I mean, that's a win-win for Satan, I would say.
It is a win-win for Satan. I mean, it really, like...
just the kind of, like, satanic trick that, like, Satan would do. I mean, that's the thing about Satan. Like, he's tricky. That's, like, one of the salient qualities of Satan. I guess people just don't really reflect on this because they just, like, think of, like, a comic book type devil who's, like, got pointy horns and, like, he's gonna make Spider-Man, you know, sell his soul or something to save Mary Jane. I don't know, but...
I mean, you know, Hollywood's done a good job making Satan kind of like like a slick, cool. Like how many people have played him? Like Jack Nicholson, Al Pacino, Harvey Keitel. You know, a lot of actors have played the devil. I mean, there's a whole show called Lucifer on TV for years that was just about like, what if Lucifer like ran a nightclub in LA and like solved murders with a cop? Like, you know,
right. I
and,
haven't
like,
actually
turned it
watched
into a whole
Lucifer.
thing.
I remember you getting the script for the pilot from somebody and like sending it to me, and like you sent me an
even
email
back
kind
then,
of like the most awesome pilot like ever written, and it was like so incredibly shitty. Like
so dumb.
You know, he's like driving his awesome black car, and like in that show he's like. You know, when you first mentioned that, I was thinking of things like Devil's Advocate, you know. But I almost feel like a lot of the time in movies, I always felt like watching movies like that, it'd be like, why would you make a deal with the devil? You know, the devil's like, it's just a little thing, your soul, and like creates a contract like out of fire. And they're like, what the fuck ever? Yeah, I'll sign it. Like, you know, but that's not really like how this stuff goes. I mean,
in the music industry.
Yeah, in the music industry, yes. I mean, it's a heavy-handed metaphor, but like I think that because I think it's rarely that heavy-handed in real life. I mean, even the folk story we read in our Gilles de Rais episode, you know, the devil sort of impersonated like a beautiful woman, you know?
Yeah.
And he got Gilles de Rais to promise him all this stuff in order to get, you know, in exchange for marrying him, you know, in the guise of this woman. But that's still, you know, the pact still counted, you know, so you'd think, you know, the heavy-handed metaphor, people would be able to, like, read into it and, like, see, you know, the sort of less sort of overdone parallel to this in actual life. But I don't know. I think that, people... I think people just kind of write off the concept and don't really have like a sophisticated idea of it, and just think like, I don't know, it's fun, it's good, I don't know.
It's a subtle
Baphomet's
influence.
cool because like he's, you know, Allah is boring because like he's just like abstract, you know, he's just like the foundation of all existence and you know, the necessary real, whereas like Baphomet, he has like a goat head, like he has like, you know, 2d12 to do like toxic damage.
He's rock and roll.
Exactly.
He is rock and roll, literally.
Yeah.
All those teenagers in the 80s that were like in the like Geraldo special, like the rock concert where guys on stage like cool, and they're like, man, like it ain't about devil worship, man. We're just here like blowing off some steam and having a good time, man. Like all our parents, they all think that, you know, it's like totally that dynamic where it's like because this music is like shocking to like, you know, a suburban parents or whatever, and considered like wearing their t-shirt is like, whoa, like that's evil and stuff. But you know, it's just, but then they just kind of, it gets like neutered, so they don't think it's evil. And it's like, it's not evil in the sense of like they're going to go out and be murderers, though. You know, there were a number of stories like that in the 80s.
Well, there's like a dialectic, as we I think pointed out very early on, like in the show, like talking about Geraldo's special. You know, there's a dialectic between that like extreme evangelical satanic fear and you know, the sort of craze for. Not the craze about or the craze to fear Satanism, but the craze for embracing, you know, the devil and the demonic, you know, and the appeal of it.
But just on like an aesthetic level, that like Ozzy Osbourne was like, no, it's not. I just write a lot of songs. And, you know, some of them got the devil in them. You know, like it's like but it's like, dude, like
you know,
all your
Saw
songs
Baby being like, so what? Like, I just wrote "Do It for the Demon." I mean, what else would you write a song about? You know, I decided to write my album "Do It for the Demon" and Upside Down Crosses, and I mean. You know, I'm all for breaking crosses, but I mean, he should learn about Islam. I stand by my position. You know, if he's not down with Christianity, you don't have to be a devil worshiper. Just, you know.
No, you don't. I mean, you really don't.
Yeah, you really don't.
Okay. Do you want to take a quick break and then we'll come back and talk about Alan Moore? Oh boy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Speaking of comics, I really
comics.
think, you know, that's like kind of the whole thing where like people need some kind of like icon or like hero, you know, like just the same way like Miguel Serrano needs like Avatar or Hitler to like, you know, wield a flaming sword and like destroy like the evil Kabbalistic Judaic cult, you know, people are
Yeah.
like, well, Baphomet would beat him up with like his, corrosive breath.
I mean, we already have Thor as like a Marvel character. Why not throw Baphomet into the mix as a lovable scamp?
I'm sure it won't be that long. I mean, well, we already have Lucifer. Lucifer is like part of like the MCU or something, or the DCU. One of those.
I think he's DC. I think he's DC.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I mean,
he might
really,
pop up in the Justice League.
I feel like Marvel also could make a Lucifer show, right? You can't copyright him.
I guess it's open. It's public domain.
They need to have dueling shows about like how awesome the devil is, and like just compete over who can praise the devil more.
Yeah.
You know.
They really have to. Okay, we're back. Do you want to read the next question?
Sure. What's the SJ take on Alan Moore? It seems like he's in the right wavelength, but his chaos magic shit sometimes makes me question. I love his work, but I'm wondering if he's sus that IDK about. I mean, Alan Moore, like, for me, is someone who, like, as far as, like, comic book auteurs go, like, he's definitely the best. Like, you know, and the other people who sometimes would get named as being, like, on the same level as Alan Moore, like, really aren't even close.
Yeah.
You know, so he definitely is the best, like, person to work in that medium in English that I know of, you know, from my not very deep knowledge of, like, the comic medium. You know,
I'm
and I
not
guess
very
it kind
well
of
versed
does
in it
work.
either.
Yeah, you know, I mean, there might be, like, sort of more, like, avant-garde, like, interesting sort of graphic novels out there that, like, I'm unaware of. Because Alan Moore ultimately still is, like, kind of like someone who's done a lot of work in that superhero vein, you know, and kind of the standard sort of genre of American comics that the most popular genre they're associated with for whatever reason is these superhero stories.
Yeah.
And so I mean, yeah, he's a weirdo. I mean, I like that he hates, like, you know, Hollywood adaptations of his work and kind of has repudiated the superhero genre as a whole. You know, and, like, regrets, like, the writing that he did on Batman and things like that, and thinks, like, you know, it's not actually substantial enough, like, or complex enough, like, character, and, like, too much of a flat, one-dimensional cartoon to, like, sustain any kind of, like, interesting narrative or story or themes. You know, I think that's a fair point. Like, I think it's odd that he worships, like, a made-up snake deity named Glycon.
He does?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I mean, he is a big. He's very into practicing chaos magic with a K, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that one Grant Morrison is like another guy who I think, like, another comic guy who, like, was really into chaos magic.
Yeah.
In particular.
Definitely. He's the one that we just mentioned, talking about how he was the Scottish comic book writer that did work on, like, the Justice League, and I think Batman and Superman and the X-Men also, like in the 1990s. I think he also did a series called The Invisibles, which some described as, I guess, The Matrix on LSD or something. Yeah, and he had a character in that called King Mob, who was meant to be based on Morrison's ideal version of himself as an occult rebel hero. And he started to find that when he wrote bad things happening to King Mob, bad things happened to himself. When King Mob nearly died from magical bacteria in one of the comics issues, Morrison himself caught a life-threatening infection. Later, King Mob was shot and almost killed, and Morrison himself had to be hospitalized for blood poisoning. After that, Morrison started writing King Mob as having great things happening to him, and Morrison started to have unexpected fame and fortune on his own. So, like, but he's like a mortal enemy of like Alan Moore. Like, they hate each other, but they both have tons of occult stuff.
Oh, they
in
hate
their
each
works.
other. I didn't realize that. That's
yeah,
funny. That's
they're
funny
rivals.
Little drama. Why do they hate each other? What's like the origin of their hatred for each other? I just remember I wanted to mention that
it's a whole long thing.
There's that book, The Book of Lies, which is like a sort of a collection of essays on sort of magical or occult themes. I think we read one essay from it about Marjorie Cameron in a previous episode, but he had an essay in there, I remember, and it was like literally about like drawing a sigil, like, and encoding it with something, you know, that you want to happen, and then like jacking off so that when you achieve like the moment of orgasm, like then, you know, you will like concentrate on the sigil, and that will help realize like your magical operation.
So it's sex magic, yeah.
Yeah, it's basically like your Barnes and Noble intro to like sex magic, or, you know, I guess wank magic. This is funny. Morrison asked their readers to participate in a wankathon while concentrating on a magical symbol in an effort to boost sales for one of his comics. Cool.
Wow.
Very cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, he did Watchmen, which I read, one of the few graphic novels I've read. I read years ago.
Alan Moore did Watchmen.
Yeah, Alan Moore did that. Yeah. And, I mean, I think it's like, it's weird how, and maybe this is why he is so reticent for, like, Hollywood to adapt his work, that, like, they were able to twist it into that HBO series, which was, like, so fucking bad, and kind of reversed all of the themes that were going on in the original Watchmen, and ended with, like, what if, like, a cop is the real superhero? That was
just, like, unfortunate in every way. Like,
it was very weird, but, I mean, I think there was something there. It sucks that... I just
don't think, like, Damon Lindelof is, like, someone who really has, like... like the same sort of vibe. Like, I mean, Alan Moore's a very unique person, like a very obviously, you know, his style is very unique, and I think that ultimately, like, he is just a more sophisticated writer and creative than Damon Lindelof.
Yeah,
you know, and I think that kind of, and I mean, I think that he's done, you know, The Leftovers, like, there are interesting concepts in that. I think that some of the more interesting stuff actually came out, like, from, I mean, it's kind of sad how, like, TV, like, the bar is so low, where, like, someone like, I feel like Reza Aslan. Wow, it's real. We're having a lot of synchronicities, because Reza Aslan, who I accidentally mentioned before, like, now I'm actually mentioning, like, Reza Aslan's, like, influence, I feel like, was, in a way, like, helped to give The Leftovers a little bit something more, you know?
Yeah, I know.
After they ran out of just adapting the story,
source material.
The book. But you know, ultimately, I feel like, was that, like, as good as, like, you know, Watchmen? Like, no. I mean, one I kind of watched as an adult, and one I read as, like, when I was younger, you know, and reading kind of things like that. This time you get recommended those types of books, so, you know, maybe I was more impressed by it then than I would have been. But, you know, when the show came out, and I was, like, wondering, like, was Watchmen this stupid? I did go back and read it, and I did find aspects of it to be still held up in many ways. And in fact, I appreciated aspects of it that I hadn't before, obviously. You know, so, yeah. And, you know, one Alan Moore story in a similar vein that I really liked was Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. I think that kind of is, like, a similar thing to Watchmen. Really, maybe it's, I think probably it did come before Watchmen, but it's kind of about in comics, you know, they do these sort of in-universe things to, like, reboot, you know? It's kind of like in the Star Trek movie that J.J. Abrams did, where, like, he was afraid to piss off the old Trekkies, So he had to have the reboot be like in diegetic kind of, and like as an alternate universe where like the old Star Trek isn't harmed and still exists, but like we're also rebooting it with like hotter younger actors. Like it's they do that with comics, where like they will be like, okay, we're gonna have like a darker, more modern take, but there's actually some sort of like universal like cosmological reason why like the old characters like are going away, so the Alan Moore wrote kind of a story that was sort of like a farewell after the fact to like the Superman of the like 60s, like the Superman who would always be like, oh no, Jimmy Olsen's turned into a giant turtle, or like, Superman's turned into a baby, and like Lois Lane has to spank him, and like all these like stupid, like weird, like little stories that you see like sometimes like circulating around the internet maybe as like an amusing thing. And it's kind of that same sort of like an attempt to like give like a sort of more adult perspective on this, and it's interesting, the ultimate villain ends up being like this little mischievous imp, Mr. Mixelplick or something, like Mixelplixel, something like that, like there's some character who's like a little man in a derby hat, but in the end he like reveals that he's actually like a 5-dimensional demon. Superman has to like break his one code and like kill him with like some kind of ray, and the Superman like relinquishes his powers using like one of the many varieties of kryptonite. But before that it's just like brutal, where like Alan Moore just like slaughters all of these like Superman like secondary characters, like they all just like die off horribly, like in his last stand like in Antarctica or something. I don't know if like I'm making a point with that. I was just thinking, it's an interesting kind of point in like Alan Moore's genesis as a writer. But I mean, I don't know if like he's like sus in a way. I think that he's a little bit just of a weird man.
I'm looking at a picture. I'm looking at this picture on the article in the psychopath.org about Morrison and Moore's rivalry, and there's like
I want to know more about that, because
there's like a picture of him with like a quote next to it, and he's wearing like a very weird spiral symbol on his chest, and he's got this unkempt beard and hair, and he says, quote, "You have to be very careful of what you say, because if you suddenly declare yourself to be a magician without any knowledge of what that entails, then you are likely to wake up and to discover that is exactly what you are." What? Okay. I don't know. Like I think maybe people thought he was subtweeting Morrison by saying that this guy is like just playing fast and loose with magic and stuff. I don't know why he's wearing a spiral on his chest. It's not like a triangle spiral, but still, I don't know. He's really obsessed with doing magic. He's very he seems to be very kind of like careful and like superstitious about stuff.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a true believer in magic. He's not someone who's, just doing it for show. Although he did at least at one time worship an ancient cult of like a sort of made up snake god slash like glove puppet.
Yeah, I saw that in this this interview here. Where did he say? Yeah, we like basically it was a Roman snake god.
Yes, but it was like the only or the main literary reference that exists for it is from Lucian, and it's like sort of satirical. And Lucian says that Glykon was created in the mid-2nd century by the Greek prophet Alexander of Abonoteichos, and Lucian was ill-disposed toward the cult, calling Alexander a false prophet and accusing the whole enterprise of being a hoax. Glykon himself was supposedly a hand puppet. So,
wow. Okay.
I guess Alan Moore deliberately chose a fake god, or like a god that was sort of known for being false, to sort of be the center of his worship.
Yeah.
To kind of play with that possibility, or maybe, to minimize the power that it might have over him, like through his magic, possibly.
I see. Yeah, I found actually an interview where he describes what happened with that puppet, with the puppet.
Yeah.
This is an Arthur Mag from 2007, and they ask him let me get a little perspective here. Before 93 or 94, you would have considered yourself an atheist, but you knew quite a bit about the occult already, judging from some of your stories and characters. Alan Moore says, well, yes, but there again, as a writer, I've got to be interested in everything. So yes, I was at least as knowledgeable about the occult as any fantasy comic writer has to be, but it was just one of the things I was interested in, and it was something that was theoretical. My interest in the occult was, I'm interested in what people believe, because that was the terms in which I saw it. There was no way that I could say whether what these people believe has any basis or validity. What was interesting to me was that people believe these things. Starting with January 1994, all of a sudden, it suddenly got a little less remote of an academic topic for me. I found myself in the middle of what seemed to be a full-blown magical experience that I could not really account for. And they ask, what do you mean? He says, when you found that you've spent at least part of an evening talking to an entity that tells you that it is a specific goetic demon that was first mentioned in the Book of Tobit in the Apocrypha, chuckles. Now, there's only so many ways that you can take that. The most obvious way is that you had some sort of hallucination or that you had some sort of mental breakdown, something like that, which is fine unless there have been other people there with you at similar experiences at the time or something similar. Then when you say, all right, this was some sort of real experience, you then have to think, well, was it therefore something that was purely internal? Was this some part of myself that I've given a name and face to or projected in some way? That's possible. Or was this thing what it said it was? Was this some entirely external entity that actually was what it claimed to be and was talking to me? That's possible. I tend to try and not rule out any of those. The thing that actually feels most satisfying is the idea that it actually might be both of them. It might be both inside you and outside you. That doesn't make any logical sense, but that satisfies me most emotionally. It feels truest. These are Gnostic experiences. You've either had them or you haven't. For example, the first experience I had, and this is very difficult to describe, but it felt to me as if me and a very close friend of mine were both taken on this ride by a specific entity. The entity seemed to me, and to my friend, to be this 2nd century Roman snake god named Glycon. or that the 2nd century Roman snake god called Glycon is one of the forms by which this kind of energy is sometimes known. Because the snake as a symbol runs through almost every magical system, every religion. In the yoga systems, you've got the Kundalini serpent. In the Amazon Indian creation myths, you have innumerable serpents that take part in the creation. The same with the Bible, the serpent in the Garden of Eden, the worm of Enod, the Midgard serpent coiled 3 times around the world. It's difficult to find a religion that doesn't have a serpent in it somewhere. So we had this experience. At least part of this experience seemed to be completely outside of time. There was a perception that all of time was happening at once. Linear time was purely a construction of the conscious mind, and in fact, time is much more the way that people like Stephen Hawking seem to describe it, where space-time is almost like some big football, and you've got the big bang at one end of it and the big crunch at the other, but all the moments are all existing at once in this huge hole at the moment. It's only our consciousness that's moving through it from A to B to C to D. In fact, the whole alphabet's right there from the start. So there was this perception of being outside of time. From that perspective, it was possible to see that all of time was in fact happening at once. There were other revelations. There was a lot that seemed to be connected with this Roman snake god, whose name was Glycon. Now, the only references there are to him, which are very disparaging, are in the works of the philosopher Lucian. Lucian explains that the whole Glycon cult was an enormous fraud, and that Glycon was a glove puppet. And I've got no reason to disbelieve that whatsoever. It sounds absolutely true that, yeah, the false prophet Alexander, who was the person putting on the Glycon show, had a large tame boa constrictor, and he had the head of it tucked under his arm and draped over his shoulder. He had a speaking tube that had been designed to look like this inhuman long-haired snake's head with articulated jaws so that it would seem to speak. Yeah, that sounds about right. Of course, to me, I think that's perfect. If I'm going to have a god, I prefer it to be a complete hoax and a glove puppet because I'm not likely to start believing that glove puppet created the universe or anything dangerous like that. To me, the idea of the god is the god. It doesn't matter what form it takes. This is one of the problems that, for me, Christianity has. Christianity's got some lovely concepts, beautiful concepts. However, Christianity also insists upon a historical Jesus. If it was ever proven that Jesus didn't exist, the whole of Christianity would fall to pieces. There's no reason for it to, but it would, because they insist that this was definitely real. He was definitely born of a virgin.
Would be a reason for anyway, whatever.
Well, he definitely died on the cross and then definitely physically ascended to heaven, all of which sounds like bollocks to me. That sounds frankly impossible. That can't happen. However, you got this wonderful story. The story's got complete integrity. As a story, it's fine. It's rich in symbolism, it's rich in moral awareness, it's insisting on this historical background that is the problem. Now, for me, I don't believe that there ever was a living snake that had a semi-human head and long hair and spoke. That would be mad to believe that. I believe that, yeah, Alexander the false prophet has got some really clever scam going involving a puppet and a boa constrictor, but nevertheless, that was a representation of the god. That was not the god. The god is the idea of the god. That was what I believe that visited me and my friend upon this first occasion, and which I've had contact on subsequent occasions. Now, this god Glycon was supposed to be, at the time of his inception, was supposed to be the second coming of the god Asclepius. This is the god of medicine, who is traditionally shown as an old man with a snake around his staff. This is the origin of the caduceus symbol that you see in ambulances and hospitals. That's why the snake is associated with healing, because of Asclepius. Now imagine my surprise then, when some years later, after I've had this preliminary experience, I was reading the collected letters of Philip K. Dick. This was what he wrote during the early 70s, just before he had the Vallis experience and went completely mad. He's talking in very plain terms about things as they happen. He's talking about how he's getting all this information that seems to be being flashed into his brain, the pink light, and he's talking about how part of it seems to have to do with the Holy Roman Empire. Part of it seems to be an ancient second or third century Rome. Part of it also seems to be to do with the perception that all of time is happening at once, and that, in his words, the empire never fell. That all of time is actually a solid state thing that's happening all at once. And there's this particularly little shivery bit that I read in one of his letters where he says, I found out the name of the entity that's contacting me. It's called Asclepius. I thought this was a little bit worrying. It sounded like he'd had a very similar experience, and it seemed to be related to the same entity. Now, I don't know what to make of that. It seems to me that you might say, magicians would say there was a serpent current, if you like, an energy that people could connect up to, and they might understand this energy in a number of different forms, as Asclepius or Glycon or Kundalini or whatever. But it's essentially a kind of sinuous kind of energy that we associate with the snake and a certain sort of consciousness.
I take back this guy is just an oddball. He's sounding a little bit sus to me.
It's about to get a little more sus. I also had an experience with a demonic creature that told me his name was Asmodee, which is Asmodeus.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Not Pollux.
When I actually was allowed to see what the creature looked like or what it was prepared to show me, it was this lattice work. If you imagine a spider and then imagine multiple images of that spider that are kind of linked together, multiple images at different scales that are all linked together, it's as if this thing was moving through a different sort of time. You know Marcel Duchamp's Nude Descending a Staircase, where you can see all the different stages of the movement at once? So if you imagine that you've got this spider, that it was moving around, but it was coming from background to foreground, and what you get is sort of several spiders, if you like, showing the different stages of its movement. This is terrifying. Now if you imagine all of those arranged in a kind of shimmering lattice that was turning itself
Andrew
inside
Getty
out.
Also see this?
I know, right? Is this the God phone for the next gen God phone? As you see a spider god and snakes from Rome talking to you.
By all means, continue.
The demon told him that it was good at mathematics. It's vain. There's something fourth dimensional about this. This is all stuff I was actually saying at the time while I was having the experience, which was pretty extreme. Anyway, over the next couple of weeks, I started researching Asmodeus and found out that actually, he's the demon of mathematics. Also, there's a thing which apparently, traditionally, he is able to offer one, and this is called the Asmodeus flight. This is where the demon will pick you up, carry you into the air, into the sky, and you can look down and you can see all the houses as if their roofs had been removed, so you can see what's going on inside them. Now, that is not a description of being carried through the air. That's not being moved into a higher physical space. That's what things would look like if you've been moved into a higher mathematical space. If you were actually in the fourth dimension, or if your perceptions were in the fourth dimension, looking down at the third third dimension, you wouldn't see places as if the roofs of the houses had been removed. You'd see around the roofs of the houses, in the same way that if you imagine a race of completely two-dimensional creatures living on a sheet of paper, and if you draw a square and put one of those two-dimensional creatures inside it, they are completely enclosed because every direction in their two dimensions is shut off to them. If you then, as a three-dimension creature, were to reach down and pick up this two-dimensional speck because you can see through the roof, which is a dimension that he hasn't got. So if you're a fourth-dimensional creature looking at the third dimension, you'd be able to see around the walls of a sealed room. This was interesting because it kind of confirms the fourth-dimensional aspect of Asmodeus.
All
okay.
right. I like
yeah.
how, like, the
Okay.
idea of Jesus, like, even, it almost seems like he didn't think Jesus existed, which is, like, very, very well historically attested that there was such a person as Jesus. Like, it's very, very, like, I mean, like, if you want to say that's, like, you know, tenuous or something, like, it's much, much, much more tenuous that he didn't. And yet he's like, oh yeah, you know, there's a fourth dimensional snake that like it's like what? Like
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, you know, he just then he goes on to talk about doing mushrooms and how, you know, you don't need to, but they do help. Whatever gets you there.
How awesome they are.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
He's getting into some deep stuff.
It's interesting that this is not, I actually didn't realize that he was just like your standard, like, you know, atheist dude who just like wrote fantasy and then he like saw a goetic demon. I mean, I think that his understanding of like, you know, his phenomenology of world, I think is correct. And that, yeah, like things are like within us, like everything that we experience is in a way internal, but also like there is an externality to what's inside of us as well. So I think that point I think was true and correct, but I don't know. I feel like his whole idea of like, oh, I'll just worship this snake, and like if I know that it's fake, it seems like he already fucked up because it doesn't seem like he actually does think Glycon isn't real.
Well, he does think that Glycon is not real.
Yeah, I use a double negative, but
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Sorry, I was just magically using a double negative.
He actually said, like, you know, the most magical thing right now is that we're having this conversation. What are the odds of that, you know, being a thing? It's like, okay, language is magic, sure, I guess. If you want to be like that.
Well, is he saying the most magical thing is that there's something at all instead of nothing? I don't know.
No,
I feel like
I think he's talking about like the technology, like being able to like transform consciousness through conversation and language is like a form of magic, and I don't know. I mean, if you want to get real loose with it, maybe.
I mean, like, there's lots of people like that out there. Like, he's hardly the most sus person in the world. I don't think that he's actually like necessarily pernicious force, but I kind of like am not all about like his framework of like perceiving the world. Not that I'm sure like he wouldn't necessarily care, but I don't know. I find similar. I mean, again, I feel like we're seeing a lot of like resonances across these things. Because like what he's sort of doing, like the whole idea of, you know, if I worship this false thing, like that brings it into being like through my will, and like it's something that is like both external and you know, internal. Like I feel like the sort of magical or occult dimension of that, like basically he's talking about like Landian hyperstition, you know, or speculative materialism, where talking about kind of like bringing things into being through will in a way, or like you know, things that have their reality and their fiction is somehow dissolved between them, maybe you could say, as a way to distinguish that. Their fictionality is part of like their reality, or there's like a blurring of these two things. So I mean, but again, it seems like he's like cavorting around with Asmodee, and like it's the same entity that like appeared to Philip K. Dick. Yeah, and like
that's
they're all,
weird
like,
too, because didn't Philip K. Dick
like,
get a God phone call?
Yeah. I mean, again, people are gonna get mad because I feel like people shouldn't get mad because I'm always like, you know, clowning on Christianity at various times, but I did find it kind of like weird and pointless and like just kind of like you know, tendentious, basically, like you know, based on certain presumptions that he would say like, all this seems reasonable to me that a snake carried me into the fourth dimension, but like the idea that
there was a
Christ,
historical Jesus.
Yeah, that was the most absurd thing.
Seems like
you know,
bollocks,
I understand that there's like, you know, there's a miraculous aspect to Jesus' virgin birth and him, you know, going to heaven. or the idea of heaven or whatever.
sure.
Yeah, but like he almost seemed to be skeptical. Like he seemed to think that Christianity was going to fall apart because Jesus didn't. And he was like, Christianity shouldn't fall apart if Jesus didn't exist.
Yeah,
and
that's kind of what he was saying.
Actually, if Jesus didn't exist, then I think that Christianity would and should then fall apart. But of course, Jesus did exist. I mean, I think
he's just kind of
true.
putting it on the same plane as like his magical encounters with like sus light beings. Is like Jesus is just another sus light being
culture,
with some
and there's
positive
lots of
things.
like annoying Christians out there.
Yes, of course.
But, like whatever. Like I don't know. I just think. Yeah, I mean,
also a lot of these
he's
quotes
more
and
careful
stuff
about
are
it than Grant Morrison, but
also a lot of this stuff is from like the 2000s. So I feel like dunking on.
I wouldn't go cavorting around with
Christians.
any snake entity.
Probably
myself.
not.
I don't think that's necessarily a dope thing to do, or that there's like any like I don't understand what the returns in that are supposed to be. You know.
I don't know, but
like what are you supposed to get out of that?
I don't know, but he does
like being taken to the fourth dimension and taught about mathematics from the snake. All right,
I mean, it sounds dicey. The last thing, then we'll move on. But in this interview, he talks about the relationship between magic and art, and I'll just read this paragraph here because I can't not. He says, Aleister Crowley performed the rites of Eleusis in London using music, perfume, incantation, ritual, dance. He had Victor Newberg dancing at that one. S.L. McGregor Magger did a rites of Isis. He put together the Golden Dawn Society. Kenneth Anger, somebody I've got a great deal of admiration for, he and people who are slightly affiliated with him, Maya Deren, these are sort of people who have taken the old ideas of magic and then thought, well, why not apply them to the technology that we have now? That's all that the previous magicians ever did. The fact that it all looks archaic to us now, that's because things were archaic in real life. If they had access to printing presses, video cameras, and sound recording equipment, they would have used it. I'm sure that John Dee would have released several CDs of his Enochian chorals. We have to not be locked into the past. Kenneth Anger was shrewd enough to see that film was, in its way, as any art form is, a magical technology. It can be used for creating startling effects, perhaps magical effects. I think that all this goes back to the fact that originally there can't have been any difference between magic and art. Any form of art must have started out as magic. The earliest visual arts we have are cave paintings at Lascaux. Now, these are shamanic, the very way that the cave paintings at Lascaux are arranged, where you have to go through very narrow, sort of crouching series of corridors almost before you get to the center cave where these wonderful animal pictures. It must have been done as some sort of initiation. You're led through this darkness, and when you get to the center chamber, probably lit up by fire, you would not have seen drawings of animals on the walls. You would have had animals flying around the room. That is because if you'd never seen a drawing before, just imagine what the very idea of representation before people had the idea of visual representation. What a magical act it was to draw some marks on a cave wall and have everybody understand that this sort of humped line was actually the spine of that ox that we killed 2 days ago, and to understand that a line on a wall was in some way the animal, you know. That's something we can't really grasp now because we are so used to looking at a picture and thinking, of course, well, it's a picture. It's a picture of a cow. It's a picture of a horse. But back then, what an incredible leap of consciousness to actually come up with representational art, which of course leads to written language. The first people to do it would have been magicians. I mean, he might be right about that.
Well, yeah, they're definitely, I mean, like, that's definitely true that there always has been, like, an association between magic and language. For sure.
All art is magic. Also, he loves Kenneth Anger.
Yeah, he loves Kenneth Anger. It's great admiration for him. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that you, like, can't, you know, enjoy Alan Moore's comics, I think, or, you know, whatever Alan Moore, like, his, whatever, if he's written a novel or an essay or something, I think that's fine, you know. I think that's true of Kenneth Anger, like, you know, I mean, Kenneth Anger is a little bit more like on the borderline because he might have like done a snuff film, or like
for
you know,
the Gettys,
I don't know.
Yeah,
we don't know if Alan Moore actually harmed anybody or like you know, if he's truly like motivated by like darkness, but just like you know, be aware, you know, like whatever. Like I'm not saying there's something to be learned from. I mean, even, like, from Crowley, like, that's interesting, like, historically, there's something to be, like, learned from that, like, you know, he's an influential figure, so is Alan Moore, like, you know, there's enjoyment to be had in, like, some of the stuff. I mean, some of the stuff that these people produce, like, not to compare Andrew Getty to Alan Moore any more than I already have, but, like, some of it is just, like, just radiates evil and hellishness, and, like, there's no joy to be found in it, like the evil within.
Yeah.
But, sometimes, like, they can produce, like, interesting works of art, but, maybe the, like, just... be careful. Like, I wouldn't necessarily take Alan Moore as, like, my moral, ethical, spiritual lodestar, like, in this world, Like,
I would not either.
I think, some of these people can have interesting insights, and sometimes they might actually be, like, plugged into certain things or know about certain things in a way where, maybe they've spoken with people have sought them out, like, they've learned things through, like, their conversation, their connections that give them a certain insight, so it's worth to consider what is in their work. But I wouldn't be like, yeah, this guy has it all figured out, like, I'm gonna, like, I wouldn't, like, model my own behavior on the behavior of, like, if a snake appears to you, like, you should worship it, or so, or pretend to worship it or whatever. Yeah, I would not be, like, worshiping a snake. Like, yeah, there's, like, quote unquote a snake in a lot of religions, but, like, I feel like not a lot of them say to worship it.
Yeah. I mean, it's in the Bible as, like, a villain.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Are you supposed to worship the Kundalini serpent, or is it just, like, a metaphor? I don't even know about that.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. The snake's a complicated symbol, but...
Yeah, it's well, according to Wikipedia, it's an energy released within an individual using specific meditation techniques. It's represented symbolically as a serpent coiled to the base of the spine. I mean, that, like, the snake is a symbol of energy. That's kind of a little bit different from, like, worshiping a snake god, I feel like, as, like, kind of an abstraction or, like, a symbolic form of energy, That's
for sure
common in, like, various, magical religious systems. Like, but I do think that, you could maybe say, like, that even if you're, like, not down with, like, paganism or incarnate gods or anything, I still feel like that's not quite as sus as worshiping a snake puppet.
That is fake.
Or a spider, or, like, a demon.
Don't worship a spider god or a demon or a reptoid, basically.
Yeah, don't.
Just don't.
Just don't. Yeah.
Okay. Should we move on to the next one? It's kind of related.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so...
Did I read the last one, or did you?
I think...
I don't even remember. I think I...
You read the last one. Okay, so this one, Ossificans asks, do you think Satan is a computer?
I love that question.
That's a great question.
Yeah, I don't think Satan is a computer, but I think that he's definitely, like, very... he's very fluent with and familiar with computers. I think that Dajjal might be a computer. I don't know if Satan himself is definitely not a computer, but or I would say he's not a computer, except maybe insofar that, like, everything is a computer that computes.
No,
fuck
maybe
that.
In the
abstract sense of, like everything
Skynet
being a computer as long as it computes. Yeah, no, I do not think Satan is a computer in that way.
Or, like, such an advanced computer, like, from the future that is a sort of demiurge.
I mean, only like, if we're a wet CPU, then you could call Satan, like, a flame CPU.
Like, Satan is a cloud
CPU.
being that moved to, like, the center of the Milky Way galaxy and then decided to, like, take over a planet and rule it.
You mean like a nanite cloud being?
Yeah, like a nanite cloud being. That
No, I don't think Satan is a nanite cloud being, but I do think that Satan, it definitely is all about, like, AI, and, like, I think that the idea
Satan wants to be a computer.
Satan would like a computer as a vessel, and he would love to encourage human beings to have the hubris of, like, creating life in the image of God, or in, like, they would love to encourage humans to, like, take unto themselves the, like, creation of life, that is reserved for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He would love that. So, I don't think that he is a computer, but I think that he loves computers, and the Antichrist, or Dajjal, may well be something like a computer.
I think that I could see...
Or, like, a system, like a cybernetic system in some way.
Yeah, I could see, like, some kind of dark futuristic Silicon Valley scheme to create some kind of computer god that like manages us better than we could ever manage ourselves, or something like that.
Even Elon
that
Musk
would be
like said
satanic.
he was like worried about that because someone like mentioned
He's probably helping build it.
One of his Silicon Valley friends. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I felt like the reason why he expressed concern over it was because like he wanted to like throw a wrench into the competition. But someone mentioned that they would be interested in developing like an AI deity to give human beings instructions, and Elon Musk was like, no, that's absolutely not. That's terrifying. But
he's just creating the literal technological means by which they could do that by creating Neuralink.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, I totally disagree with this, but let me build the thing that'll allow it to happen.
Well, he has classic arrogance. He has the same kind of arrogance, which is that maybe he has the ethical sensibility for what it's worth to recognize that would be bad, that maybe the person saying, like, an AI god sounds great doesn't have, but he doesn't have, like, the self-awareness to, like, realize that, like, himself falling into that trap. Like, he is a very hubristic and arrogant person, as are a lot of these people who are obsessed with
That could be true,
AI.
but who even knows with Elon Musk? Like,
yeah, exactly. I mean, again, it's totally possible that he's just like saying that to like cast doubt and like discourage people from being interested in like a competitor when he wants to be the one to build an AI god.
Yeah,
he certainly
but I think
is into
sometimes,
like Rocco's Basilisk and shit, you know.
Well,
so I don't know.
he is, but at the same time, he's from the PayPal mafia. You can't trust any of those motherfuckers. And I feel like a lot of his big projects, there's always like a dual use thing that doesn't get talked about. Like, I was just reading the other day that Tesla, I guess what they make, I think somebody in the Grotto was saying that they make a ton of money off just like hoarding and trading and selling off like carbon credits for like electric vehicles. And like, that's actually where they make their bread and butter. Like, they don't actually like make their profits off their cars. And so, and they just like, they sell it to other companies that don't sell as many electric cars. And like, that's where like most of their income. I don't know if that's like literally true.
That's
but
hilarious.
yeah, but that kind of thing. Or like,
sense.
you know, like SpaceX is like all you ever hear is him talking about like Mars exploration, you know, or whatever.
Yeah.
And, you know, so he can go be an Elon, like Werner von Braun wanted, and rule Mars and all that shit. But they never talk about how like what they make their bread and butter off of is like sending Pentagon satellites up for the Pentagon. Like they do tons of defense contracts.
Or like Bill Gates
militarizing
talking about
space.
Sustainability, you know, he's like, we need to go to Mars so that like when, you know, the planet dies, we'll be safe. But he's actually building satellites to the Pentagon. Bill Gates is talking about conserving everything, but actually he's like buying up farmland and like, you know, doubling down on all the most abusive, like, harmful farming practices.
Yeah.
They're all like total hypocrites.
I'm still on the tip.
He's obsessed with AI gods.
I think they want like AI controlled bubble cities in the future if the climate gets bad enough. And that's that's what the fucking Hyperloop is for. You notice how it's like he made this big deal about how he's going to like revolutionize transportation, but really what he's doing is like building an underground tunnel system that can like shoot between different places.
Vision of like, you know, a Gattaca race and everyone on the outside of the bubbles would just perish and die.
Yeah, they just
while the Gattaca race lives in the bubble cities. Yeah, they would love that. And they would view that as like beating the climate catastrophe.
Yeah, like that's what they're talking about when they say like
it's funny, because they've made
like,
it into
bubbles.
an existential risk, you know, when it's not really an existential risk for them. Like that's the thing.
No.
Like what they mean like about the urgency is like making sure that they keep their power and that like the results of it don't, that like, you know, when people see the sort of consequences for society, the social and economic consequences, they don't like rise up and we don't actually build back better. That's what they're like. They want to build back better for them, or they want to keep things good for them. And not have us build back better, like, you know, against what really they've caused. They want...
Yeah, they're not going to overthrow their own class, you know.
No, exactly. And in fact, the only
the
only world they want to save is, like, the bubble of themselves. They don't have, like, any...
Which is why I think it might be a literal...
for, like, humanity as a whole. Well, they do.
It might be a literal bubble.
As long as there's one person alive, you know, humanity lived, you know. It doesn't, like... We don't need like all these pro populations, etc. Like humanity will go on as long as like Elon Yeah, you know what I mean. My point is
Yes.
that, like, humanity in an abstract sense, like, as long as there's one, like, a species isn't extinct as long as there's one, or at least two, a breeding pair, So if there's a whole community of, like, elite people chosen for, their outstanding personal essays.
Just like that quote in the Nick Land thing about how, like, you could apply the same logic to, like, the pilgrims to the bubble cities are going to be of the highest caliber and the highest stock, and it'll all be climate controlled.
Well, it all
probably
makes
what
sense.
that
The same people who are going to be the whole colonizing Mars is the same impetus as, like, the bubble cities, like, saving us all from.
Like, why were those Texas oil billionaires bringing Steve Bannon in to, like, do the biosphere or the biodome, like, project in the 90s, and then he, like, sabotaged it? I mean, are they just thinking about... Because everything about Mars exploration, we're totally, like, well, I feel like it's not totally off topic. Everything that could be used for Mars exploration could be used to build bubble cities on Earth, connected by hyperloops that exclude people that don't have, like, the 5G microchip in them or the 10G microchip, and, like, all the children in there get, like, CRISPR'd to be, like, enhanced, and people start, like, doing eugenics on themselves.
Yeah, you saw the new Dune movie. Did they mention the Butlerian Jihad, or, like, the whole idea of, like, the thinking machines needing to be destroyed? Because
I kind of forget. I don't think so. I don't think they mentioned it in the first one.
I'm wondering if they would bring it up, because I feel like that needs to happen, and, like, I feel like they wouldn't, like, let it be mentioned, because, like, that seed of that idea could be dangerous, because, like, we need to just, like, say no AI, like, no robots.
Yeah.
Like, and put our feet down, like, no, of mechanical atoms to, like, achieve sentience. That's just, like, a nightmare. Like, and the people who create it will just, like, become absolute megalomaniacs over doing that. And the machines themselves will have, like, dangerous potentialities. I'm just gonna, go full Luddite on this one and say that we need a Butlerian Jihad against the thinking machines. It needs to not.
I think so.
Go down.
I think so, because they think what their masters program them to think. So it's really just, you think it's like they always try to pass it off like it's this sort of amoral, rational,
just like
non-biased.
Just using the data.
Using the data.
Synthesizing the data, yes. Mm-hmm.
And, like, all manner of horrors can be snuck in under, like, this sort of, like, data-driven approach, because it's, like, seemingly not biased and doesn't have a nefarious double purpose to it. You're just a wacky conspiracy theorist if you think.
And then they're also, like, the perfect slaves. So you don't need the rest of humanity, so they can all die in parishes of the bubble.
You're right. Like, we shouldn't want like an army of, like, Boston Dynamics robots that can do all kinds of manual labor to become, like, affordable and profitable and stuff, like, versus real people. Like, we're starting to put,
automation has just been so awesome so far. We just need to make sure that everything is automated. When as I kind of alluded to earlier, the week that we're recording this, like, there was a little bit of a crossover between, like, Movie Bob Twitter and, like, sort of, like, conspiracy adjacent, like, program to kill type Twitter, and I saw, like, on Movie Bob's timeline, like, he had posted something that was like, what we need is for every job to become automated so that physical strength no longer has any meaning and everything is only about intellectual prowess. Like, you fucking dumbass. Like, it won't end there. Like, it won't become like a utopia where,
he'll
like,
get
everyone
invited
values,
into the
like, he's not getting into the bubble.
I know.
He's not getting into the bubble.
He's not getting into the bubble.
No way is he getting into the bubble at all. He's gonna be, like, in charge of, like, like, keeping people out of the bubble. Like, he's gonna be appointed to, like, enforce the bubble barrier, but not be let in himself. Like,
they'll promise him he will be after he, roots out every conspiracy theorist on left Twitter and denounces them.
They'll make some kind of point system, like, where, like, based on, like, YouTube monetization or something, and, like, it'll just, like, keep sort of getting higher and higher, like, the threshold that you need to meet to be able to get access, and it'll always be, like, just, like, above, like, what the number of points that, like, his latest review of, like, Eternals 500 has earned. But
sad
yeah,
future.
like, just the idea that anybody could be, like, in favor of this, like, You know, I mean, yeah, I mean, it reminds me of, like, the one good Tucker point that we mentioned, like, you know, when we're talking about how, like, of course, like, neither of these illusory, forced dialectics that are designed to, like, perpetuate psyops and, like, politically paralyze us, like, are totally invalid. And, like, one of the only good things I've ever heard Tucker say is that, you know, we shouldn't, like, just allow CEOs or whatever to automate trucks, even though that might increase their bottom line. And there actually should be some protection for the people whose livelihood depends on, like, driving trucks. You know, I don't know, like, what that looks like, you know, the like, you know, how these things would be enforced, but I feel like a good starting point is, like, a Butlerian jihad against, like, any kind of, like, the
that
automation,
is the
thinking machines.
I
like,
think that
it's
that is
bad.
the
It's
thing.
just been bad already to the extent it's already happened.
You have to put
know?
your foot down against the entire, like, technological ecosystem a little bit to push back against any of this shit, because otherwise it feels like the inexorability of it is just like, well, but then they're gonna figure out how to do self-driving trucks, and they're gonna like, what are you gonna, like, China's gonna do it and we won't, so then we're all just gonna have to adopt it, and it's gonna be a race to the bottom. It just feels like technology is, like, dragging us like this albatross into, like, a race to the bottom, and its momentum cannot be stopped.
That is definitely the way in which Satan is a computer, or, like, a device. The computer is a device of Satan.
Yeah, it's definitely possessed. The computer is definitely the PC, the Pazuzu computer. Has wreaked lots of havoc and is kind of, it just keeps gobbling up things, and I think it'll turn itself into some kind of, like, manifestation of satanic energies. Even more so than it already is.
I mean, just look at, like, Silicon Valley. Look at, like, everything that, like, the tech sector represents, like, in American society and globally.
I hate it.
It's repugnant. It's awful. And it's like, and everyone despises it, and yet it persists.
And
much
yet
like Satan.
it persists.
Nevertheless, it persisted.
It persists. Okay. Yeah. I always forget who read what.
I think.
Do you want to read the next one?
Yeah, sure. Maybe we could weave these two together, because, like,
yeah, they're kind of related.
One is, do you believe by EZ? Do you believe that Lyme was a bioweapon? And then the next one by Blue Rider Strong is, how's about West Nile virus? Mysteriously got from Israel to MY in '99. Caught again, Israel. Anyway, supposedly via mosquitoes, surviving the flight in baggage. I think it was a test balloon. Really? So two bioweapons. I guess how's about West Nile virus is actually referring in the chat to the prior question.
I
saying,
think so.
Was West Nile virus a bioweapon, or just asking generally about?
I think they're seems
asking, like they're implying it was a bioweapon.
Was West Nile virus also a bioweapon?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So Lyme disease and West Nile virus, were they bioweapons? I don't know. I really don't know enough about, like, the history of Lyme disease. I remember West Nile virus being the thing when I was young. Like, that we had to be worried about, like, encephalitis.
I just straight up think Lyme disease was. Like, I remember there's that weird island, I think off the coast of Connecticut, maybe, where they had done a bunch of bioweapons kind of testing. And I think it's been written about more in like mainstream publications in the last few years.
Lyme disease more commonly than West Nile virus. When I search Lyme disease bioweapon on Google, the first thing I get is, no, Lyme disease is not an escaped military bioweapon. I love the no articles.
That's funny because what I get is Ross Douthat on his chronic Lyme experience. I didn't know Ross Douthat had Lyme disease.
That's interesting, yeah.
Well, he's such a New Englander, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's more of a New England... But I remember people... Well, I don't know if it was an article in like The Atlantic or something, but it talked about how there was like a weird... almost kind of like the stigma around HIV and AIDS, but it was seen as like a hippie or like a hiker disease, or even like a yuppie.
Out in the woods getting ticked.
Yeah, like it serves you right. Like, it's like such a weird reaction to have.
Yes.
And also like the vague kind of
Plum
like the vague
Island
symptoms.
is where people say it's from.
Plum
right?
Island,
Plum
that
Island,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
Right.
And
that's in New York.
Yeah.
Plum Island, New York, and Fort Detrick is another place people say that maybe it came from.
I see. Yeah,
yes.
maybe it first developed there. Apparently, there's a controversy around chronic Lyme disease. It is not recognized in the medical literature, and most medical authorities advise against long-term antibiotic treatment for Lyme disease. So they're saying it's kind of like a psychosomatic thing.
Yeah, because I know people who are like, I always have Lyme disease. You know, I'm gonna have.
I mean, Ross Douthat says I have chronic Lyme.
Yeah,
disease.
It's kind of like a Morgellons thing after a certain point.
Wow, he actually published this like he published this 2 days ago on October 30th, 2021. How I became a science experiment. Wow. And he's talking about trust the science. That was the mantra many people repeated in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. An entire worldview condensed into 3 words with many implications.
I love Ross Douthat. I can already tell where this is going. Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, about 6 years ago, he got Lyme disease, and he feels like he still has symptoms. I mean, Justin Bieber, I think, had chronic Lyme disease.
Oh, yeah. Didn't Justin Bieber, like, go into some kind of, like, tube, like, hyperbaric chamber to deal... Maybe that wasn't about Lyme disease. Maybe that was just, like, for other reasons. But I remember he did, like, a hyperbaric sleep chamber or something. I called it hyperboric, but maybe they're the same.
Yeah.
Hyperbaric, hyperborean.
Interesting.
You know?
Yeah. So,
hyperborean sleep chamber. Yeah.
So it almost sounds kind of like a long COVID thing, but like they're on opposite sides of the political spectrum, because it's like the libs that believe in long COVID, but they're being like, no, Ross Douthat, chronic Lyme disease is fake.
You do not have chronic Lyme disease. Yeah, I didn't even, but I actually have like heard more like people who are like in the I'm unwell, or like health, like not everyone is healthy, or that type of thing, like sort of like. Like disabled activism, talk about having chronic Lyme disease.
Well,
I feel like I have. I mean, maybe I'm misremembering, but I think I have seen, not like Ross Douthat type people talk about having chronic Lyme.
Oh, definitely. That's been a thing for years, and yeah, the origins of it are very sketchy. I think there was actually an article recently about how there was a vaccine developed by SmithKline Beecham, but then they sort of didn't release it ever. In the 90s, yeah, the FDA approved it in 1998. Its entry into clinical practice was slow for a variety of reasons, including its cost, which was often not reimbursed by insurance companies. But wait, subsequently hundreds of vaccine recipients reported they had developed autoimmune and other side effects. Supported by some advocacy groups, a number of class action lawsuits were filed against GlaxoSmithKline, alleging the vaccine had caused these health problems. But these claims are investigated by the FDA and the CDC, which found no connection between the vaccine and the autoimmune complaints. But despite the lack of evidence, the complaints were caused by they were caused by the vaccine. Sales plummeted, and Limericks was like, it looks like limericks, like I don't know, like a sneaky Irish leprechaun trick. Limerix or Limerix was withdrawn from the U.S. market by GlaxoSmithKline in 2002 in the setting of negative media coverage and fears of vaccine side effects. Wrong, not true. No vaccine ever hurt anybody. So yeah, I don't know. But you know, the people, the Max Planck Institute is where it was developed. And one of the developer there said, this just shows how irrational the world can be. There was no scientific justification for the first OSPA vaccine, Limerix, being pulled. Okay,
wow.
so
so
lots
the
of people had bad
anti-vaxxers
side
were
effects.
wrong.
Wow, they were totally wrong. But then they pulled it from the market anyway, which I'm sure, I didn't actually read that whole article. I have a bad feeling that they would spin it around. Like, this is what happens when disinformation happens. Like, people with Lyme disease aren't able to get their vaccines.
But it seems like they don't need it, right?
Well,
like,
unless you believe Ross Douthat and the other people that say that they still have, symptoms from it years later. And if it was developed as a bioweapon...
I'm not a Lyme disease expert. I don't know.
I don't know either.
I'm not even, not only am I not a Lyme disease expert, I'm not, well-versed in Lyme disease, period. I feel like there's a lot of different things going on here. They pulled the vaccine, but they claimed that it did work. They claimed there were no side effects. It was all... The
FDA and the CDC, investigated it, and then they said that these side effects people were claiming were not due to the vaccine. But then they pulled it from the market after that because it got a lot of negative press attention for
Again, I feel like we're in the kind of vaccine bioweapon trap where we need to pick one to be the bioweapon or come up with some kind of complicated maneuver to make it make sense.
Or you could just say that the vaccines are not as safe as the company that developed them claimed that it was.
Yeah. I guess.
Which,
or maybe they're unrelated, they're not aware of it being a bioweapon, they think that it's a real disease, but their vaccine sucked by accident. The vaccine.
That's possible.
Weren't a bioweapon. I'm just asking what you're.
Yeah, and they're profiting off the bioweapon that was released, in the public. And
this is an interesting little quote from a New Haven Register article about Lyme disease being a bioweapon. In a news release, Smith, who I guess is Christopher Smith, a Republican from from New Jersey, pardon me, he introduced an amendment to the House Defense Authorization Bill on July 11th. Calling for the Pentagon Inspector General to investigate whether the Department of Defense experimented with ticks for potential use as weapons of biological warfare between 1950 and 1975. I guess there has been some books about this, and people have heard about it, so it made its way to this. So in a news release, Smith said that he drafted the amendment after reading a number of books and articles suggesting that significant research had been done at U.S. government facilities, including Fort Detrick, Maryland, and Plum Island, New York, to turn ticks and other insects into bioweapons. Have these experiments caused Lyme disease and other tick-borne disease to mutate and spread, he said in the release. Philip J. Baker, executive director. So it seems like this actually is kind of part of the current debate around vaccines and health and bio weapons and gain of function research and things like that. It seems like it's not incidental that this is coming up now. But anyway, so Philip J. Baker, executive director of the American Lyme Disease Foundation, said the notion that ticks would be attractive to hosts for weapons of biological warfare is laughable, and that theories tying Lyme disease to government intervention is something experts have heard before. It's not new. The issue was raised before, Baker said. The ALDF's website has information debunking the Plum Island and Fort Detrick theory as a source for the spread of Lyme disease. The specific strain that some claim was made by the government and escaped from a high-containment biological warfare laboratory, Borrelia burgdorferi, was identified in museum specimens of ticks showing the presence of the strain. More recent studies revealed that the Ixodes ticks and B. burgdorferi were present in the northeastern and midwestern regions of the U.S. in pre-colonial times and many thousands of years before European settlements were established in the U.S., reads the ALDF section of the government creation theory. Lyme disease certainly existed in the U.S. long before anyone knew how to diagnose and treat it. The website gives the historical information. The Plum Island Animal Disease Center was managed by the U.S. Army Chemical Corps as a component of its biological warfare program in 1952. The biowarfare program was abolished by President Richard Nixon in 1969, and the PIADC program was transferred to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Baker said that information on ALDF's website dates back to when former Minnesota governor and retired professional wrestler Jesse Ventura visited Plum Island in a 2010 episode of his television show Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura.
Nice.
Baker rejected the idea of ticks being used. Yeah, I remember seeing some episodes of that. I remember the one where he went to go to FEMA camps. I remember the one where he investigated reptoids too. But he was skeptical. He was like, "Are you kidding me? You're telling me there's reptilian aliens living in this house or something?" You know, like. But Baker rejected the idea of ticks. This is the part that I thought was interesting. Baker rejected the idea of ticks being used as carriers for weapons of biowarfare for several reasons. First, an agent of biowarfare should be capable of creating chaos and havoc. He said smallpox, Ebola, and anthrax could be used to quickly incapacitate targets or cause rapid illness. Lyme disease doesn't fit into that category, he said. I wouldn't consider using Borrelia, he said. It's not life-threatening or lethal at all. Additionally, Baker said 95% of Lyme disease cases are reported in 12 states because ticks cannot survive in dry climates. That makes ticks weak candidates to cause a devastating blow to a population, he said. So I think that's interesting. Like, for one, I mean, this guy, like, I'm not necessarily saying he's wrong that, like, you know, I'm not going to go and say, like, that Lyme disease didn't exist beforehand, but I do think that, like, you know, or, you know, I'm not going to commit, like, either way. Like, I'm sure that the people who are, like, on the Lyme disease bioweapon tip, like, could, you know, debunk his debunking, but, in some way, but I do think that it's an interesting, like, idea and doesn't necessarily, like, ring to me as logical as apparently it does to him, that, like, any bioweapon should necessarily, like, create instant chaos and havoc and just, like, destroy the population. It seems like something that could just, like, cripple the population and trap them in an endless lockdown could also be useful. Like, you know, it's
something
based
that
on the effects
I think
of
about
COVID,
that with,
I feel like that would be also, like, a pretty good bioweapon. Like, it wouldn't be... I wonder, like, you know, if in the long term, something like that could be a more effective bioweapon than something that just, like, decimates the population completely and then, like, burns itself out somehow.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
for one,
I guess for different goals, maybe, you know.
For one, like Rat G13, which was so lethal in high concentrations, but had really no easy ability to spread among humans, like, aside from the guys who were in the bat cave that caught it. And so, you know, there's that problem of if something's too lethal, then it kills off its host too quickly and it can't spread.
Yeah.
And I think the social dynamics, I think you absolutely have to wonder with something like COVID, is this not the perfectly convenient type of virus to, like, cause, you know,
I mean,
like,
that makes
to use
sense.
as kind of a Trojan horse to push through
What
a whole new set of policies, like social policies.
What he said makes sense if you're, like, you know, an evil, like, terrorist who's, like, from somewhere else, and, like, you're just gonna, like, drop a vial of smallpox in the middle of a crowded street and then, like, run back to Iran or North Korea or whatever. But, like, if you're doing an inside job bioweapon, you know, as, like, a control tactic, then...
Just think about it. If, like, the globalists, you know, or anybody else, like, did have a design to maliciously release this thing at, like, the Wuhan military games, something that, like, and especially something that spreads as well as it does, like, it would be bad for them if it killed too many people, because then all the rich people that get it might
could
die
too.
And so nobody wants to sign up for that shit. So it's this basically this virus
people aren't
that
vaccinated to begin with, so, like, you know, you'll die before there's a chance for, like, vaccine mandates and, like, papers please stuff, you know. So
exactly, and you kind of had to, like, lock down a little bit with everybody else.
I don't think you could vaccinate someone against anthrax, could you? I feel like it's a different type of thing.
No, I think they did have a drug that they would give people as, like, I don't know if it was like a prophylactic or something like that. I think now they have an anthrax vaccine, maybe, but, like, I remember the Bush administration was taking. They were taking some kind of drug because there was a fear that, you know, they could get an anthrax.
Wow, there is an anthrax vaccine. Interesting.
You can. I think it's mostly, like, military people that get it.
For bacteria, but okay. Anyway.
Well, yeah.
I guess it makes sense.
But, you know, it's like that. You wouldn't want to unleash a kind of Ebola-like thing that anybody could catch, like, through casual. Well, you can't catch Ebola by casual contact, but let's say you wanted to be the most evil. Like, make the most evil sicko virus possible.
Scorpio
you make, like, airborne Ebola or something, but even that would like you'd have like Tom Hanks like with his like flesh falling off or something. It would be like too much, too much, and you wouldn't want to release something like that to just like decimate everybody, because once you release it, you can't like tell it not to attack anybody it comes in contact with. It's like releasing a xenomorph for like Michael Myers or something.
I guess the best thing would be like to have a perfect vaccine, give it to all the globalists somehow. And then,
Moderna was working on one with the Wuhan Institute of Virology. I wonder, that's probably why they were able to like...
Well, I saw some theory that was like, I don't know, did we ever mention this in the show? I saw some theory, like it was on Twitter that I saw it, definitely. I don't know where it originated, but it was someone who was like, if you're kind of conspiracy-minded, don't get the vaccine. But you're very conspiracy-minded, get the vaccine right away. Because, like, soon they're going to unleash the real virus. And, like... that's what the vaccine will protect you from, and like everyone will be decimated.
Like the round 2 of the Spanish flu, where the second wave was like way deadlier and attacked young people.
Yeah, but it would be like reason. The globalists, like they planned that like all the globalists would get vaccinated, and then everyone in the global south would die like of the real virus that they would unleash. That was the idea.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was the idea.
Yeah, like
it's a hypothesis.
I feel like
for sure. But you look at the groups of people that aren't vaccinated.
Aren't vaccinated are the ones who like they want to die
the
most. So that's like something that's a stumbling block for me in terms of like the logic of like the vaccine being poison. Not to like say that there's no side effects at all. For those of you who are like Red Kahina acolytes out there who are like going to be upset at me.
I'm going to stand up for our
Phil
vax
Greaves.
skeptic listeners here.
No. I mean, it's fine to be a vax skeptic, but
they were rushed. And
the Phil Greaves like germ theory, like type shit. Like, no, I get the vax, and I'm like not saying there aren't side effects, but like that can happen, and that you definitely could be in a position where like you could take the vaccine not having COVID, and then like the side effects you could have could be worse than what would have happened otherwise. That's definitely
it seems, especially if you're a child or like a teenage boy, like your technical rate of getting myocarditis is like it's all very rare, but it's like technically higher than getting hospitalized for COVID or like dying from COVID. So like you're technically running a high, but like you got to do it, and you're gonna be fucking banished from society if you don't, and blah blah blah. So okay, what about West Nile virus in terms of like I don't really remember the story of it, and Wikipedia doesn't really have anything about it. I don't think the word Israel is mentioned in the article. It just showed up in New York in 1999. Supposedly via mosquitoes surviving the flight in baggage. I don't know about that. I mean, West Nile virus is a weird one because it's kind of been around. People do get it. Animals get it. But I guess they've done, unlike, say, COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2, they seem to have been able to say that it's like almost 1,000 years old. And I think it comes from Japan originally. I don't know how they know that, but... That is that's the official story on the West Nile virus, is that it kind of maybe eventually jumped to humans, but it had like gotten into primates and I think horses and even like cetaceans, like a whale got it and like died. Yeah, I know.
I mean,
so I don't
remember. No, a fatal case in a killer whale in Texas. Yeah. Sad.
But we didn't lock down our whole fucking society for it. And,
I remember there being a lot of fear about it.
There was a little bit. They always were trying. I think we talked about it in our first Dark Winter episode.
And there's still no vaccine about that.
There is no vaccine, and it's like they tried to make it a thing, just like with like Zika and some of these other things, but like H5N1, like, but people just kind of weren't really vibing on it that hard. It took a special kind of virus, I think, and enough of a like network internet network infrastructure that could support
so that you could work from home.
They needed that. It wasn't ready
I
yet,
remember hearing about West Nile virus like nonstop, like at the time that it came, was a big deal, like in the 90s or in the early 2000s, whenever that was that summer where everyone was afraid of West Nile virus. But I guess like
it's funny, I have almost no memory of it. Like I remember SARS, I remember the other ones, but
I definitely remember SARS too, and I remember H1N1. I don't know, maybe, I don't know, I don't know why, because it seems like it would be all over. It was all over the U.S., right? I don't know why you would have heard of it less than I did. I was thinking maybe it was an East Coast, West Coast thing,
it popped up in New York, so that might be a reason
maybe.
why. Like, you were in the hotspot of it, and I don't know. I don't even know if it got to California.
I think it was all over, but it might have been more intense in New York. I don't know, but...
Well, it started in New York. It was first detected in New York, in the United States at least.
I feel like this is actually maybe even less deadly than COVID, maybe. Like in about 80% of infections, people have few or no symptoms. About 20% develop a fever, headache, vomiting, or a rash. In less than 1%, there's neck stiffness, confusion, or seizures.
Wow. So it's like 0.0001% of people die.
There's a really small percent, and if your nervous system is affected, then there's a 10% chance within that small percent of people whose nervous system is affected, there's a 10% chance that you will die.
Okay, so so even weaker than COVID, and COVID's pretty weak.
COVID's
for most
not
people.
very. It's only like
Even
on a
Delta.
macro level that there's like any thing
And certain
about COVID,
populations,
but,
it seems like obesity is like a negative, and like diabetes are like negative risk factors, and of course like old age, basically.
Yeah.
Like Colin Powell probably didn't die of COVID, but like it just was like the last little.
Yeah, it was the straw that broke.
Pushed him over the edge.
I mean, he was vaccinated, but it didn't save him. Oh no.
Interesting.
And maybe it killed him. Maybe it was.
It
was Phil Greaves' vaccine poison.
Well, I mean,
I know. I'm just digging myself deeper into the anger of the. But yeah, I mean, well, for me, for me, the thing is the ultimate stumbling block is like they need to have some slaves left alive. I think that they probably want like a good number of slaves left alive. So
they're not there yet. Like the AI is not there yet. The robotics are not there yet.
Yeah.
And
so that's why, and I feel like the people who they want to die are the people who are like, the people who are vaccinated are like the obedient masses who believe in capital W wokeness and mask mandates, and also like wealthier people who are more like them. Whereas the people who aren't, like that's who they would prefer to die. I feel like,
It's hard for me to not think of like that most of these like rich liberal celebrities and famous people like are faking that they got vaccinated, even though they would be in a position to like maybe lie about it or live their lives without having the mandate forced on them. But they still seem so they believe it. Like they believe that. Yeah, like I got this vaccine. Like they seem really psyched about it. So
yeah, I don't think that. I mean, I think that they're not necessarily faking it, and I also think that like
maybe Biden.
Yeah, I mean, we're also
frail.
in the early stages. Like we don't really know. I mean, there could be like down the line a thing where like the vaccine like has horrible side effects, and that will be like a whole different psyop where like it's just this mass die off like or something. Not to
like I just
gonna get,
hope
like
just
fucking,
selfishly
I'm gonna
like
get yelled at for sewing
like,
down
for
over
people,
that now.
Yeah, I don't know. For the people in my life, I just hope that like Alex Jones is wrong, that doesn't happen, because that would be pretty fucked up, and like there's nothing we can do about it now. Like everyone's taking the death shot, so it's kind of like.
Oh, you mean like the vaccine's like a time bomb? I was thinking like down the line,
like in 3 to 5 years, your immune system
booster,
50% done.
Right, exactly. Like folks, it's so sad. These communists they don't know what they're getting themselves into, but you can't wake them up. You simply can't.
I mean, or it could be neither of those things could come to pass. There's not like the vaccines don't kill everybody, and also COVID doesn't mutate into like a super deadly thing that kills off all the unvaccinated people.
Yeah, not to minimize. No, I don't think that will. I hope. Yeah,
we really
hopefully, inshallah, neither will happen. But yeah, I mean, for now, it does seem like even though definitely bad things can happen to you as a result of getting the vaccine, for sure. Right now, it's like not at the point of like being itself like a bioweapon trap, as we know that we know of. Maybe Alex Jones will be right, and like in 5 years we're all fucked.
Yeah, I feel like it's still too early to really.
That will be an interesting podcast vacuum, because I bet like a bunch of podcasters will die off.
Every
ourselves.
podcaster, except for like the QAnon people, are going to be left, which doesn't seem like it would.
It'll
fit
just
the
be
agenda
literally Red
of anybody.
Kahina's podcast. That will be wow. The meek will inherit the earth, but yeah, and I mean it doesn't help that Red Kahina is like a big like booster of that shit, because like we all know she's getting that Paul Klein instructions from the necrophone. But
yeah, who knows? Okay, well, yeah, can't really say. Don't know enough about West Nile to say if it's like a bioweapon.
I mean, I think that like in terms of, I mean, at a certain point you'll get to like the whole like you gotta see like, okay, well, were they all bioweapons? Like, is every virus that's like ever happened a bioweapon? And then you're just kind of like slipping into like, well, are viruses even real? You gotta eventually deal with like, do we just need to eat healthy and viruses are just like a made up psyop? Whereas, again, like I'm not a virologist, I'm really playing fast and loose. There's one guy in the Grotto, his name escapes me, but I think that anyone who's in the Grotto will like recognize him. And he definitely was, going to bat hard for like viruses aren't real and like it's all about your diet. Again, I don't know enough. I wasn't like necessarily persuaded by what he was saying. I think that people did have some compelling counter arguments that were raised for the existence of viruses.
I think there are compelling arguments to be made that there are a lot of environmental factors that like degrade, especially in our food supply, that degrade our health. We have vitamin deficiencies.
Yes, that's
and
true.
Just
that's
like
true.
the lack of like vitamin D.
No. Of course, diet
alone.
is very important, if not, the most important thing
and we
in
have
terms
these
of your health.
Poison.
You don't have to pick one or the
America.
other. You don't have to pick one or the other in terms of are viruses real or is diet important. I believe.
Sure.
Or I would, like, if I were to believe that viruses were real, taking the recommendation of the arguments of, most, medical specialists, just assuming that there is such a thing as viruses, real epistemic crisis, but assuming that there is, like, that would not diminish. Well, I think that everybody agrees that, our food's totally poison, and, your diet is a big impact on your health. So those two things definitely could coexist. But yeah, I mean, I do think that like maybe something that could be said in terms of like, even if not every single one of these diseases was developed on Plum Island or Fort Detrick, like there is kind of like an ongoing sort of social psyop around like the way that these diseases are like responded to.
Definitely.
And like the idea of like the coming pandemic and like, is this it? Is this disease X? Is this disease X? The question of like, is this the bioweapon? Is this the bioweapon? Is almost a logical response to like, is this disease X that like has been the reaction to all these things? Because there's like a disease X social protocol or script that they've just been waiting for the right thing to follow. Yeah, right.
Like they're just ready to go at the right moment.
They're
just like how they had the
go,
Patriot Act written already before 9/11, and we're like, oh, we finally have a reason to use this.
Right, exactly.
And that's worked out very well for them. Maybe they're going through a little rough patch right now.
Yeah,
but,
I think that very rarely are like these policy things like just like in the moment, like after the fact. They're like, what do we do about this? Oh, we'll do this. I feel like it's always like, that they just so happen to like have the perfect plan, that they've been obsessed with for their entire careers beforehand. Like, oh, what a great opportunity to invade Iraq. It just so happens that I've been like, the only, they're like the only logical response to this is that we should invade Iraq, which just incidentally is the thing I've been obsessed with doing for the last 30 years. Like this is my wildest dream, like my one true wish, and like the whole like in the goal of my life, and it just so happens to be the only possible way to respond to this crisis. Like it's the only thing that makes sense, and everything else is literally insane. Keep like 7 hoes, I need more, cause these bitches are lame. I don't talk, let my blade walk, that nigga stabbing away. Fuck about me, this shit is sweet. I'm a pussy killer for the make it bleed. I think I'ma end my life today. Leave a bitch, cause she full of streets. I see bloody skies, they be talking lies. Killer pussy, nigga, they all fucking die. I'm young homicide, but stuck in my eyes. Cause up on my waist, make the devil cry. Genocide on my mind. Okay.
Okay. So, do you want to read the next question?
Sure. Real Dominic is asking, I would be interested to hear the host dive into the whole blood over intent thing. Seems like there's already been one killing regarding it. It's kind of a YouTube-specific satanic blood cult. This high schooler who had like a blood over intent and smoking cigs fetish YouTube channel is one example of the Dracularity. Did he post a video?
I post. Well, I don't know if they posted a video
article.
I posted a Gizmodo article I just found from 2018 called "The Blood Ritual That Lives on YouTube."
Yeah, I have some knowledge of this. It seems like it's kind of like like occult TikTok, like the kind of like thriving community, but like it's a very like dark iteration of that. Basically, like it seems to me that what the name means. I haven't actually like read a confirmation of this, but what their name seems to mean is that like they pour the blood or like over the intent. Like the blood is spilled over the intent. And that allows the intent to manifest. Like, basically, it's blood magic that they're performing. Like, the same way that, like, you'll see TikTok witches, witch talk, like, write, like, things over and over in their diary to, like, manifest stuff. It's, like, a form of, like, the manifestation thing that people are, like, very into. But it's, like, a bloodletting-based form of that. And there's also a guy at the center of it who claims to be, like, the devil incarnate. And,
what's his name?
What is his name? He did say that he was Satan, right?
Are you talking about Mark Braun, also known as Quasi-Luminous?
Yes, Quasi-Luminous.
Okay.
Yes, correct. Yeah, Quasi-Luminous.
Yeah, he posts on his YouTube channel. I'm reading a Pando article now from this year about it. Mm-hmm. He posts on his YouTube about how he is Satan, the epitome of evil, and the prince of darkness over all of the earth. Through Braun's decision to spill his blood, he became a man who has power over heaven and earth. The claims themselves do sound ludicrous, but they've attracted at least a few observers of his ideas. So he started this in 2016, and like what they do in Gizmodo.
The channel no longer exists. Quasi-Luminous has been, he's been bounced off YouTube.
he got bounced.
They
say
back
that
in some form. I don't
this
know.
community has dangerous connections to flat earthers and the kind of the New Age QAnon thing.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, now he's gone too far.
You cannot say the Earth is flat. Yeah, worshiping the devil, like that's fine. But saying the Earth is flat, that's anti-truth. That's anti-Christ crusade.
Oh wow! So these are actually banned off of they're not banned actually. I just have to click through a viewer discretion thing. This version
I got Quasi-Luminous doesn't exist. I mean, there's many.
No, Quasi-Luminous is
videos.
Quasi-Luminous is gone.
If you search
there's a
blood
lot
over
of photos.
Intent, there's tons of stuff, including positive stuff that comes up like right away on YouTube. Yeah. Not Quasi-Luminous himself, whose videos I wanted to watch, but yeah, I remember reading that he had claimed to be the devil. This is a very interesting quote from that article that you just mentioned, the Pandy article, where while many channels have posted footage of this ritual, which is spilling blood.
I'm watching one right now. It's creepy.
Some appear, it's not entirely clear whether they're doing it at Braun's behest. Some appear to be adherent to the world as hologram thesis, which promotes a notion that the world around us does not physically exist, but is an illusion. All right. Others see it as a spiritual battle with Satan as their leader. There is no canon text for any of this, but what is the same across all these channels is that blood matters and that spilling blood has power. That's not how Devin Maggi explains it, however. Maggi, also known as Flat Earth Paradise on YouTube, is a recently active creator in his community. Maggi was an earlier BOI practitioner in 2016, preaching the power of blood over intent on his channel to others. However, Maggi told Pando Daily that he stepped away from that movement due to it becoming a cult-like, you must do this sort of practice. That's funny. Like, that it became cult-like. Yeah, it seemed normal. Like, it seemed chill. Like, I was all about, like, promoting it to everybody when it was just, like, some guy saying he was Satan and that all I needed to do was cut myself and so I could be one of, like, the 14, of, like, 144,000 who will be saved or something.
Yeah, this is creepy.
Maggi drinks one glass of his urine a day.
I just saw that.
Nice. Okay.
And he runs something called the Sophia Sanctuary in Oregon that is a women's, spelled with a Y, temple in Eugene that celebrates all sacred paths and women in all stages of life. Some of our rituals are women only. Oh, I bet he jumps in and joins. God, this is so sus. SS, Sophia Sanctuary. Yeah, it's all over. It's been founded in 2002. There's also a Gaia Sophia Sanctuary, but maybe that's different. It is a 501c3. Wow, that is creepy. Yeah, he drinks his urine, and He organizes the Sophia Sanctuary, a private location in Oregon designed to allow seekers to spend time considering the spiritual realities that Magi claims to broadcast to his viewers. The sanctuary does not appear to come at a cost, although its location is kept private due to a desire to only accommodate those who, quote, already have been on this path of divine reclamation.
Great.
Magi was not willing to provide any specific numbers of attendees, although he claims that only 1 in 50 are accepted. So it is kind of spinning off. Oh, they got a quote from Rick Allen Ross, the cult expert here.
I'm seeing some quasi-luminous reposts, at least. You know, people have reposted, like, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. Great.
Okay.
It seems like this is kind of, like, very similar to, like, you know, what you'll see about, like, reality shifting or manifesting, where, like, you know,
or
maybe
altars,
quasi-luminous is one of the biggest proponents of it and, like, one of the biggest figures in it, but also, like, it's a whole nebula of things, like, around the idea. I mean, really, the ancient idea that there's, like, power in, like, the spilling of blood. I mean, this is, like, a perfect example of something that's, like, incredibly, like, horrible. Like, I just think this is, like, extremely dangerous and poisonous. And
This
a
is
great
bad
example
news.
of how Satan is a computer, or, you know, the way in which Satan is a computer, or, you know, that he loves the computer, to be more accurate.
He loves
this is
it.
awful. Like,
this is where maybe this isn't the seek help part of the pyramid, the conspiracy pyramid.
Yeah, this is where the seek help should be. I think, you know, anything that, like, you know, I mean, blood definitely does have power. Like, that's true, but, you know, usually the way that these bloodletting rituals, and, like, you know, I know that they're probably not, like, bleeding themselves to the point of death or anything, but it seems like this is just, like, really gravitated around, like, things that are not only, like, you know, just, like, the occult element of, like, worshiping a single person as Satan, and, like, also just, like, doing the self-harming behavior to, like, manifest like magical energies, like, just seems bad. You know?
I noticed in the
bad.
comment section of Gizmodo, a user named Miles wrote, "LOL, can't believe I'm seeing this here. So bizarre. I did it. There are gains to be had, but selling a piece of yourself for a little power and sight, just not a good idea." And somebody asked, what kind of gains have you witnessed? And they said, coming to conclusions without experience, try thinking for yourself. The world really opens up. Sight, better understanding, it's... okay, never mind. He that was replying to somebody else. But when they asked, like, what gains did you witness? He said sight, better understanding. It's not something most people I know have a use for, although who trust their preferred sources of media. The soap opera is real for most. Also, I expect most to just be taking the piss, but in case you're actually interested, please don't do it. There are better ways if you're into thinking for yourself, gathering your own data, and building your own belief system. Okay, well, you know, they don't seem to have enjoyed it. You know, not the most profound statement, but, like, it's I don't know. Just I don't see anything good coming out of that.
No,
like the guy who says he's a personification of Satan, telling you to cut your hand open over an intention you wrote on a piece of paper. That seems like some satanic tech influence happening. And
it seems like just
Jihad
one of those
absolutely
no, Subliminal Jihad definitely cannot endorse blood over intent. I think we can actually issue maybe a condemnation
sure,
on this front. We can issue a fatwa. Yeah, exactly. Our fatwa is don't get into blood over intent. Seems horrible.
Don't go to Sophia Sanctuary.
Yeah, and it is amazing that, like, this is something that you can find, like, quite easily, like, on YouTube still, despite, like, them tamping down on, like, Flat Earth or whatever.
It's a little wild that you can still watch it with a little, like, content warning beforehand.
Probably because, like, you know, I mean, they're as ludicrous, like, you know, they called their beliefs ludicrous, but I think that, no, it probably actually does work. And I think that, like, the people in Silicon Valley, like, know that it works.
Oh my God!
I'm sure that
Do you think Peter Thiel, like, cuts his Blood Boy's hand open over like
this
an
is
NFT?
Exactly the type of thing. I mean, you know, I'm reminded weirdly of those Army Hammer, like, DMs that were leaked. You know,
I'm such a cannibal,
that were, like,
LOL.
all about. Exactly. Like, I think that. I mean, there's a book that might be interesting to read, like, on the podcast at one point. It's simply called, like, Blood. It's by the guy who wrote the book Semites. He's a little bit of, like, a weird I'm trying to remember.
Well, titles like that.
Yeah,
I'm
trying to,
shocked.
no.
Blood and Semite. Okay.
Well, Semites was all about like the idea of it's an interesting like historical book. He's a little bit of like a like idiosyncratic writer, but it wasn't like a weird. It wasn't weird in that way. It wasn't weird like Miguel Serrano or something. It was like a study of the concept of the Semite like historically. It's by Gil Anidjar, and he wrote a book called Blood, which was all about it's called Blood, a critique of Christianity. But I think that it's like more than just like what the subtitle would imply. It's really just about like the like importance of blood as like a concept, like throughout like what you might call Western culture, which really is like Christianate culture.
You drink the blood. In the mass,
you do. I mean, well, yeah, exactly. Like you can't really say that. Like if you're, a Christian, you couldn't really say that blood. And in Islam, like there's examples like Matam, like in Shiism, like they'll sometimes like they'll hurt themselves.
Whip
extreme
themselves.
Ecstatic Sufis sometimes will like hurt themselves or bloodlet like in that state. So it's not a practice that's unknown to non-Christian religions, because I think that it actually is true that like there is like power in blood, but I think that sort of without like any kind of like structure for it, or worse, like a perverted structure, like around some freak on YouTube, like especially, and also just like, I don't know, in general, like it seems dark and just like a nightmare manifestation. Yeah.
Speaking of the darkness, this has been in the news recently. I just put a Vice article in the workflow from March of 2021. This one's a doozy, and unfortunately, the Satanist has never heard anybody crowd is going to have to take another L, because the title here is "Teen Accused of Stabbing Student to Death Was Into Online Blood Rituals and Conspiracies."
Oh, yes, I remember hearing
a
about
month
this.
before a 17-year-old student was stabbed to death in Alberta, the accused shared online videos promoting conspiracy theories and participated in a YouTube blood ritual. So Dylan Pountney, 19, shared content on social media promoting debunked theories about the Earth being flat, world leaders being
that's a debunked theory. Yeah, if anything is debunked.
Debunked theories about the Earth being flat, world leaders being
I love
reptilian
the idea,
shapeshifters.
like, of calling that debunked. Like, we really need to retire the word debunked if we're at the point of being like the idea the Earth is flat is debunked. Like,
yes,
all right,
okay,
great, thank you, congratulations. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. So debunked theories about the Earth being flat, world leaders being reptilian shapeshifters, and the U.S. election being, quote, stolen from Donald Trump.
Again, also, like, I just love the juxtaposition of that. Like, the world is flat.
Those three things.
It's ruled by reptoids. Like, who the fuck cares about the election?
Right? Yeah, they got to mention it. This is where it leads.
Right. Drum.
He also participated in a YouTube blood ritual established by a man who claims to be the reincarnation of Satan. Police were called to Christ the King High School. Oh, so they're Catholic. Ooh.
I love that he worships Satan and he like is upset about the election being stolen. Like, I feel like he's the only Satanist like who's also like into QAnon, if that's even like,
maybe
he might just be schizophrenic.
Well, besides Jim Watkins.
Besides Jim Watkins. Well,
definitely in the Temple of Set. No, actually, he is an occultist. The person found all his like social media posts, so I feel vindicated. Anyways, police were called. He was like, I'm doing. He has a he called himself Xerxes. Like his Instagram account is like Xerxes Watkins, and he posted some occult shit. Anyways, police were called to Christ the King High School in Leduc on March 15th after 17-year-old Jennifer Winkler was stabbed by a fellow student. The suspect fled the school. Police arrested him in a nearby neighborhood more than 2 hours later. Pountney is facing one count of first-degree murder. Quote, "I'm serious when I say this. The world has already ended," Pountney said, shirtless and pensive, in a 20-minute video posted February 25th. Quote, "The world is in a state of upheaval. We're trapped in our bodies. We're trapped in an iron grid. If I were to start a war, I would do it silently, just like the rulers did, by means of fluoridation, by means of chemtrails, by means of false food. Pountney also promoted more obscure conspiracy theories. One posits that most people on Earth are, quote, human prison bars or inhuman beings existing to keep
NPCs.
real humans in line. Yeah, they're NPCs. Another claims people are, quote, gang-stalked or surveilled by demons. Experts say ideas like these are dangerous and spreading quickly. And let's see. Yeah, it mentions the Nashville bomber who believed in lizard people and a bunch of like serious experts saying that, you know, this could lead to violence. Mm-hmm. And, you know, this is all dangerous.
Certainly can. I mean, literally cutting yourself is violence, like bleeding for your intent. I'm looking at the Xerxes Watkins Instagram right now. I'm still looking for... Well, it seems like he's huge into yoga. I'm seeing like endless yoga shit here. Which,
exactly.
You know, is a bit... Yeah. Manifest Destiny on a shirt. He's a Satanist. He loves
he's
yoga.
Satanist.
He's a Satanist.
I'm calling it. I'm calling it right now.
It's
Put my money down. He is a Satanist, and he's twisting his eyebrows as a tribute to Michael Aquino.
Okay. All right.
I mean, it's too obvious. Okay, so the 19-year-old, the murderer, in one video posted to YouTube a week before the stabbing, he cuts his finger and bleeds onto a handwritten letter that reads, "I spill my blood to bring forth," spelled wrong, heaven on earth for the benefit, spelled wrong, of all. Thank you, Mr. Satan.
I feel
at the
like
end he wait. At the end he says,
at the
end he says, our movement is growing. No. Wow. And yeah.
Well, see, this is a great example where, I think you actually are right that, like, there is a satanic element to people who are, like, so afraid of the satanic pedos that they're going to, like, lock their kids in the garage and let the car run and, suffocate them so they don't have to live under Joe Biden. I mean, it's very bizarre, but there's a weird confluence between the way that these, like, so chaotic, like, these sort of new... like explosive religious energies are, where you have this bizarre convergence of like super opposition to Satanism, and then like people in some ways like having the same kind of orienting ideas or like the same kind of weird circulating Dajjalic memes of like, you know, to just repeat robotically, like Tulsi talking about regime change wars. They just like say like the election was stolen, like even though like, you know, that has no relevant, like there's no real relevance between that and like you're worshiping Satan and like loving Mr. Satan or whatever.
Thank you, Mr. Satan.
Yes, it's very, very bizarre.
It's so confused, right? Like it's like we've lost even the plot. Like QAnon seems fantastically coherent compared to this guy. Being like, because... you know, the election was rigged, and Satan, please give me the power to, like, so I can have slaves in hell.
I don't necessarily think that this is a separate phenomenon. I almost think that you could say that I think that there's kind of like a great awakening in a way happening, but, like, there is no structure at all. And that's not to say that, like, within sort of systems of orthodoxy or sort of structuration or, you know, institutionalized channels for those energies, there aren't like bad things that happen and, you know, abusives and, you know, that those like, you know, no institution is really free of like bad things happening in it. You know, no institution is perfect. However, like it's just chaos, absolute madness, and really dangerous when you just have this uncontrolled explosion of like all these memes in all these directions. And I think that, you know, Shaitan is like delighted and just like prancing around in his fairy circle with delight over that, you know. And I think it's a great example of how like, you know, like as we said before, like just because someone like says they're opposed to Satan, like, okay, well, someone like with the exact same beliefs is like committing murders like in the name of Mr. Satan. Like, you know, Michael Flynn is like ranting and raving about the sevenfold archangels and the points of light, like quoting Elizabeth Clare Prophet, you know, like, you know, it's weird. But I think,
as Bob Dylan said, sometimes Satan comes as a man of peace.
Yeah, it's
true. He would know. Also, Pountney, the murderer, mentioned in a video on February 15th that he was taking escitalopram, i.e. Lexapro, SSRI, the murder pill.
The murder pills. I don't know.
But he was taking it for... he said he was taking it for PTSD, and he said that drug, being on that drug, along with doing blood over intent, opened up a, quote, flow of information and pathway of memories Okay, that is kind of sus. What, like, he had recovered memories and he's a teenager, had PTSD.
I wonder, what the nature of it was. I don't know. I mean, escitalopram's
started
like a pretty
having, quote,
mild
memories.
drug. It seems like he had
Yeah,
issues like beforehand. I mean, I don't know. He could have been like a huge dose of it, but like,
Or I don't know if he'd been abused because, like, you know, PTSD and, like, depression. I mean, could just be a sad Zoomer who lost. It doesn't say anything in here kind of like why he murdered. She died at the hospital. They knew each other. The victim and suspect knew each other, but the police would not elaborate on their connection. And they weren't going to give any more details on the case. These tight-lipped Canadians, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something.
So they knew each other, but then... In a Facebook profile photo, Pountney poses in front of a whiteboard quoting Jesus speaking to Saint Faust, saying, quote, "I am more generous toward sinners than toward the just. It was for their sake that I came down from heaven. It was for their sake that, in caps, my blood was spilled." Yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Well, like, again, this is, like this idea of blood having arcane power. Like, I mean, it goes back pretty far, like to animal sacrifice, and then of course Jesus, the whole idea of Jesus as being the lamb, that's because he's a sacrificial lamb. It's a metaphor, or an analog with being a sacrificial animal, which is a form of like magical practice, basically. That's its original context. It can also be a form of like propitiation to a deity in some way, various deities.
So maybe it has an effect, but don't do it.
Yeah, like, I don't think it's bad to sacrifice animals like on Eid al-Adha to eat, distribute to the poor. Again, like, we have like structures, we have ijma, we have agreement, that's one thing. But, I think, like, I'm not gonna say, like, that. I think this is definitely way worse than the Eucharist. Like, I'm not all about, like, the blood obsession in general. Like, I'm not, the fixation with blood. But I'm not, like, super down with that. But definitely put this below just, like, the weirdness of, like, the whole Eucharist to me. You can definitely see the resonances with it. And I think that people will say, like, this is ludicrous, but it's actually, like, one of the oldest. It's a very serious idea, and it's one that, like, suffuses our culture at the deepest level. I think we should, like, at one point, like, read that. Yeah, exactly. Ask Any Catholic, consider that book, Blood, because that's something that definitely comes strongly to mind, because it's not, even though it has an edgy subtitle of, like, critique of Christianity, which makes it sound like the God delusion or something, like, it's really about, like, the way that Christianity is embedded in, there's a whole chapter about Dracula itself, actually, and considering the motif and the image of blood in that light. It's an interesting read. I think that there could be something to consider, a good, interesting lens to consider the blood over intent phenomenon. Yeah, I would definitely give a fatwa against blood over intent, for sure, because you don't need to be doing this. You don't need to be cutting yourself to manifest things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're worshiping Mr. Satan. You're entering into his thrall. Like, just don't get, like,
ask anything from Mr. Satan.
Like, I don't know. I'm trying to be open-minded, obviously in my heart I'm like a theocrat monster who's just like, so oppressive and prudish and just like backward and bad. But, I'm just saying, like, there is something to be said for things that are like tried and true, like things that like have a nice history to them, that haven't been established like for a while. Like, I think there's something to that, and that these kind of things are evaluated. They have a nice what would you say, like a good record, whereas like running off to Dr. Greer or like to, some fool on YouTube or like some teen on TikTok or something to tell you something, like it's really not too different from what...
We're in a great open frontier of like religious experimentation now.
Yeah, I mean, it's
people
really
have
not
access
too
to so
different.
much like esoteric shit that you would have had to really try hard to hunt down like even 30 years ago, much less like 100 years ago. Now it's just like you could just putz around on the internet, on TikTok for a half hour and like learn about like the O9A and like how you can like cut your hand open to like
absolutely
bring a gin.
In fact,
it'll help you like get a boyfriend or something.
It actually reminds me of how like so many people like self-mutilated when I was in high school and cut themselves.
Same. That was like, a huge thing in the 2000s.
Yeah, it was a thing. And I think that there was like an element of like it being kind of like a cliquish type thing, or like, there's a social aspect to it where, people would get the idea from others. And like, not to say that like that isn't a behavior you can develop to deal with your pain as like a way of self-punishing. It's obviously maladaptive, but, just like it definitely, there was an element of social contagion to it. But I feel like that's just now like exploded onto a mass scale, like on the internet, and now it has a whole new dimension of like we're gonna meet Draco Malfoy by like invoking Satan through our blood sacrifice.
Yeah, or
like
I'm
it's not
catch
just like
Tourette's
I'm depressed.
From TikTok. Like,
it's not
I'm
just like
give
I'm
myself
depressed.
a
it's
DID
like,
or something.
Yeah, or like I want to like develop altars. Like I want to invite an entity into my mind. Like just go to your local mosque. Ask for a copy of the Quran. It's all,
yeah, I know. It's a simple solution.
Just do it. Just,
okay.
Go on YouTube, search how to pray Muslim.
Okay.
Well,
good. I think we have time for one more question here. Okay. And it kind of connects to I think near the beginning of the episode. Okay. So, it's from Sir Brainy. They asked, how sus do you find Zero Books to be under the post-Mark Fisher owner, or do you consider Fisher sus also?
I consider Fish sus, and I consider Zero Books to be, I'm not going to do the Alan Moore hedge where I'm like, well, they're mostly benign, they have some weird ideas, they publish some bullshit, but I wouldn't say that they're... Well, I would definitely even put Zero Books worse than that, so I probably wouldn't have said that about Zero Books anyway, but, I would say, like, they're pretty sus in terms of, like, some of the stuff that they publish, Zero Books, not all of it, like, they publish a swath of things, but there's, like, some, like, stuff that comes out of Zero Books that I would say is, like, no thanks.
I don't think I was ever aware of them, like, before Mark Fisher died, but they were one of the early podcasts I would listen to. That's my main, like, involvement with Zero, or like paying attention to Zero Books at all, because I remember that in like the kind of like the pre Dirtbag Left, like the pre Chapo days, there were not very many
Lovecraft and philosophy. I'm just looking at their recent publications.
Oh yeah.
Weird realism.
Lovecraft and philosophy. Yeah, I mean they kind of stood poised to sort of, I don't know, benefit from the wave of interest in Mark Fisher in like the mid to late 2010s. And I guess Douglas Lane is the guy now who runs it, and he does the podcast as well. And he was one of the only people you could find kind of that would like call themselves a Marxist, who was like a podcaster, kind of, or I don't know, he called himself a vulgar Marxist. And so I listened to it for a while. I mean, I think we've referenced it before. I think it was like Sea Dark Varn, and that show that had that thing about how conspiracies can't exist beyond 50 people. Mm-hmm. Which,
is he the one who said that?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
He's the one who said
that.
Yeah, and I mean, he seems like a real smart guy. He knows a lot, but he just has that kind of framework of like, nope, it can't happen, never happened. It will be found out, which I find to be, I think we both find a little bit laughable, as a way to brush aside like any kind of vast like ruling class conspiracy or nefariousness. How sus are they? I mean, I don't know. Like he was just getting I think he got ratioed recently for saying something about Dave Chappelle, and so he's kind of waded into.
What did he say? What side of the all important Chappelle debate did he fall on?
I believe he was on the pro Dave Chappelle side.
Oh.
In classic Gen X fashion. He's he's very like Gen X Portland kind of energy.
Well, yeah,
I don't
feel
mean
like
that
that's
as a total
kind of
insult,
what like
but
Zero
like,
Books is. They're like kind of like a slightly toned down Nick Land, where they're like, we're gonna play a little bit with like the woke orthodoxy, but like most of what they publish is just fluff. It's a similar statement where I feel like, yeah, that's really what I had the same kind of impulse about Alan Moore. Like there's like ideas in here that I would like not, I think are probably like ultimately like harmful or like not good, like or poor analyses that like become popular, like Mark Fisher's or Angela Nagel's.
Yeah, they
just,
publish
like, a bunch
Angela
of bullshit
Nagel
about like how cool it, like, just some of it is just like ultimately like benign crap about like how you can use like a tentacle demon as like a tool for philosophy, like a Lovecraft's so cool and philosophical, the most cutting edge amazing idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they seem like, and I know that they really like Zizek.
Yeah.
They kind of were the elders of like, it's like
unfucking work. Cool. How to fix it for good. I'm just reading some of these cool titles here.
Yeah. I guess it's no Verso, but
yeah.
I would put Verso in a more like nefarious category. They won't publish Lacerda. They're cowards. But yeah, I don't know. Zero Books, like, it's they engage with like Marxist adjacent stuff. I've learned things sometimes from listening to it. Is it super sus? I just think that, I don't know. I feel that there's a certain type of like Marxism, and I think they do talk about this a lot, but kind of the era from like the 90s and the 2000s being extrememly moribund for like the left in like the West, basically, and how they're kind of going back towards like, like a re-embrace of like Marxist ideas, but they're still very kind of trapped in the kind of like easy-going electoralism that like would lead people to like support
they're kind
Bernie.
of like all about, I feel like they're a little bit adjacent to like like black bloc type like anarchism,
They are. I think Lane was involved in like green anarchism in like the 90s, like, and then eventually like later drifted more towards like Marxism, which, hey,
I'm seeing one of their recent publications, All Things Are Nothing to Me, the unique philosophy of Max Stirner, with that awesome picture of him on. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Okay, really cool. So are they standing? Are they defending Stirner?
Well, but again, they publish a bunch of people. Like, you can't assume that all these people are a monolith. Again, it's kind of like a lot of it probably like is benign. Like, it's kind of like it's there might be some substance to be found in the catalog. It's obviously like an institution, so it's much broader than someone like Alan Moore is like an individual, and by the same token, like broader in its influence. But like middle of the road sus. Like, not to say there's something of value to be found in any Zero Book publication, even the ones that like by and large are dumb might have a kernel of something good, or by and large are sus might have a kernel of something.
It's true. I don't want to attack, like, I feel like book publishing, it's like a little mean to be like kicking them while they're down, like the industry while it's down, sort of. It's like they're like, I don't know. I feel like 5 more years there could be like no book publishing like companies anymore. You know what I mean? Like you just subscribe to Kindle or something, and so these like scrappy little outfits. It's like, I think they might publish some good stuff. They might publish some sus shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the only time I interacted with Doug Lane was I asked him why he was ignoring like Red Kahina's criticisms of Zizek. I don't think he ever responded to me. But, it's...
we'll never know why.
I mean, well, dude, come on. Like, if you're going to keep invoking Zizek, like he's this, like, great August, like, Marxist thinker, but then, like, never... I don't know. Like, it just critique him or anything like that. Or, like, think about him in the broader socialist context, which I feel like Zizek himself, like, doesn't really do that often. Like, he never talks about fucking Yugoslavia. I've complained about that before.
Yeah.
Like, you were, like, cheering, like, the breakup of, like, socialist Yugoslavia, like, ironically, in, like, the 80s, Zizek. So, like, why don't you ever talk about that? Don't you regret that, Zizek? Like... But, I don't know, you're Slovenian. Maybe you don't regret it because you're a chauvinist. I don't know. I mean, whatever. It's it's whatever. Not trying to start any beef,
Yeah.
Kill all normies, whatever. Angela Nagel. I don't know. It's like they are kind of there's sort of like a post-lefty kind of thing, but like they're not actually like directly that associated with like, I don't know, like Amy Therese or whatever.
Oh no, they're not nearly on that level. No, exactly. They're like a toned down sort of like, you know, a little bit like playing with it kind of like they're open to some of the post-leftist stuff. And I mean, like, again, like not everything like the orthodox, like, you know, what the post-left considers to be the left, like what Amy Therese means when she talks about the left, like they're not like, you know, above criticism. Doesn't mean that everything Amy says about like what she means when she says the left, aka like all Democrats and everyone to the left of them, in a broad sense, like, you know, doesn't mean all of her criticisms are wrong, even though she's obviously definitely out of her mind in many ways and like friends with total freaks. But yeah.
I don't see Zero Books having like Adrian Vermeule on the podcast, you know.
No, they would not do that.
I don't think they would
if
do
they
that.
did, it wouldn't be like a chummy situation. I mean, you know, yeah.
I think they'd have a little repartee.
Like, yeah.
A little clash.
Yeah, again, similar, like, you know, I think that, but like, I'm not going to say like what I'm going to say about Blood Over and 10. I wouldn't say like boycott Zero Books, but also don't
Zero Books.
Also don't necessarily adopt a Zero Book like Mark Fisher or Angela Nagel as like your ethical lodestar in the same way that, like, you know, you shouldn't worship a snake that appears to you. You know,
might actually be a vampire itself.
Exactly, a vampire castle. Yeah, do not. Yeah, avoid.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, Mark Fisher, we've already talked about. I think in a previous Q&A episode, we went on quite a tear about Mark Fisher and his acid communism. And
yes, we talked about him at over 2 episodes, actually, because I was like,
I mean, that is interesting, going kind of full circle from like the Vampire Castle essay being kind of about like wokeness, and then, you know, fast forward Zero Head just like planting their flag, or not Zero Head, Zero Books. Oops. Zero Books, they're kind of planting their flag like in defense of like Dave Chappelle and like against cancel culture, call out culture. But it does feel kind of in like this kind of sincere, like Gen X-y way of like, hey man, I thought it was all about like, you know, letting people like speak their mind, and like, you know, like there's still a holding on to an earlier era where these things hadn't gotten so sharp and like weaponized, and they're just kind of lamenting it. But I don't know, like you can only go so far in lamenting it. Also, like, you know, you run the risk of I think if you accept like the right wing framework of the critique of like cancel culture, then you get into some weird waters. You get like
mired down and like just endlessly like talking about fucking nothing. Yeah, if you accept the framework of like defending, you know, I used the example of like Spidey's blackness a little bit earlier, but like, you know, or let's say like Dave Chappelle or something. You know, if you're just going back and forth about this type of thing. I don't know. I feel like that's like a time sink and like kind of ultimately a distraction. And I also think like some of the things that they dip their toes into, like just like the whole thing of like speculative realism, which we mentioned. I think that that's just kind of like insert like jack off hand motion, you know, like again, I think you'd be better off like going to the local mosque, asking for a copy of the Quran, you know,
just go to your local, you know, used bookstore and buy some old paperback copies of some leftist shit.
Well, you never know, though. You might end up with, like, you know, Lovecraft and philosophy, or, like, you know, how to undermine capitalism by thinking about, like, the Church of Starry Wisdom and, like, or something like that, you know.
I will say, just on a vain note, like, I don't like the aesthetic that they release all their books in. I feel like they could use a makeover.
Gross covers, yeah.
They're like just kind of gross. Like it's like a weird font. Yeah, very boring, and like often the topics that are inside the books are at least a lot more colorful than those covers would suggest. I don't understand what that about. It's just, you know,
they need
friendly
a new
criticism.
Art department,
yeah. Hit up Harmless Civilian. Get some updated cover art.
Is this a book of fiction? No, it's a book of criticism and metaphysics entitled Night. Volume 2. To enter the many experiential chambers of night, space, silence, cruelty, secrecy, and thereby confront a vision of the end of worlds. Okay?
They need to do some semiotext shit, or get some people to design.
This book follows and expands on the boundaries of its precursor, Night, a philosophy of the after dark,
by presenting a series of new conceptual territories, figures, sources, images, and imaginative possibilities. The central idea of night is contemplated in its intricate relation to space, silence, cruelty, and secrecy, while also taking thought towards the futural limits of a vision of the last world. So, I mean, I'm sure I'm sure there's interesting things in here, but, like, you know, for one, it seems also like kind of it might be about, like, not really that much. You know, like, there might be interesting ideas in there, but I can see how, you know, it doesn't seem like it seems like it might need a bit of specificity or, you know, like, sort of meditations on these broad kind of concepts without any kind of, like, mooring. But maybe there is a socio-historical aspect to it. And I mean, I appreciate that people are still publishing books that are just called, like, just characterized as being straight up metaphysics, you know. That's a rare thing, so
yeah,
I'm not gonna knock it too hard, but, you know,
there's a book
that type of vibe
here,
like the end of worlds, you know, it's all the apocalypse, like, it's
I mean, I think I think we do have to give them credit
transcendental
for
nihilism, you know. Sorry,
we have to give them credit for this one. They have a book called Too Fat to Go to the Moon. Gay Sasquatch Saved My Life.
What is that, a fiction or is that?
I would assume it's fiction.
Okay.
That one actually does have more of a. I just don't like the font. I feel like they could change the font. You know.
All right.
Like, anyways,
yeah.
We'll weird realism, Lovecraft and philosophy. Awesome. No, I mean, I think it's nice that they publish, like, books that are, like, far out or whatever.
Unusual.
I just hope they're. I just hope they're far
outside
out
the
unusual.
academic mainstream.
Sure, somebody's got to do it.
You know,
I just wish they
you might
could
end up with a
admit-
little bit of dross, but there might be some gems in there too.
Yeah, I just wish they would admit that conspiracies can happen with more than 50 people.
Yes.
That's all I want from them.
Yeah, and they should add an Islam section to their Christianity and paganism section.
They probably
just
should.
to try to help a couple people out there who otherwise are going to start doing no other intent by reading I Pagan.
The end of every question today has been just like convert to Islam and go to your local.
Well, only
mosque.
once blood or intent like came up, then we passed
true.
the
It
horizon
got
of
serious.
like just needing to put my foot down.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Okay.
All right. Well, I guess we could probably end it there for today. I think we got a decent amount of questions done.
We did, yeah. I think.
We did.
Yeah, more than usual.
More than usual.
More than usual
thanks
lately,
to
anyway. Maybe we're getting back to our normal rate of at least 10 questions.
Maybe we are. I think we almost got there. No, maybe we did today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We did exactly 10. We did 10 questions. Yeah.
All right.
Very cool. Well, thanks to the Grotto once again for picking our brains and sending us off into digressive spirals of Dracularity.
These episodes are really quite an adventure.
They are.
Yeah.
You never quite know what you're gonna get.
True.
Right.
Yes.
But we'll leave it there. Maybe we'll do 2 next month. Maybe might do it again. It was so fun.
Yes. All right.
But for now, we're gonna go. That sentence didn't make sense. So until next time, dear listeners, stay vigilant.
Peace.
Wanna go for a ride? She's the one for me. She's all I really need. Oh yeah, she's the one for me. Emptiness is loneliness, and loneliness is cleanliness, and cleanliness is godliness, and God is empty, just like me.